Welcome. Today is Thursday, March the 24th, 2022. Uh-oh, I'm the one echoing. But I'm on mute.
You gotta turn your volume down. So the button's on the top.
Okay.
So that'll probably be up. We want the other one to turn it down. Perfect.
Okay, better. Today is Thursday, March 24th, 2022. This is a meeting of the Elected Officials Transportation Committee, or the EoTC. We currently have a quorum. Francie, thank you for coming on board here, and you look great. You look all tan and relaxed, and again, I'm extremely jealous. Francie is zooming in from her vacation site with her family, which is nice. I'm still echoing, Andrew.
It's gonna be there a little bit because you're on an iPad Pro, and I don't think there's a total mute. Mine doesn't.
You know what? That's
Unless
good,
you
because
can
nobody
find
can
it.
ever mute me all the way anyway, so we're good.
Where is it coming from, yours? Yeah, you've got volume up.
It goes all the way, but I'm not on.
Oh.
Feature.
You're right, it doesn't go all
But
the
it
way down.
like just goes to there. So Patty, if you can just block yourself out, just kind of not hear yourself.
I just didn't want to bother
Tony's
anybody
like,
else.
I think after 2 years we would
Okay.
have.
All right.
Did you find it?
I disconnected from audio.
Okay.
No,
It's
no, I'll
always
never
the
be able
same
to
thing.
figure out how to get it back. Okay, we are moving along. So we have a quorum of all three jurisdictions. We have Tom Good and Bob Circus zooming in from their, I'm assuming from their residence in Snowmass. We have Greg Postman zooming in. Oh, Tom Friedstein's here too. So we have, we're expecting Bill Madsen.
Bill
also.
is supposed to be coming in person.
So
My
Snowmass
guess
will
is
have a
he's stuck.
full council here, which is great. And we've got 3 members of the city council. We have Skippy, we have John, and we have Tori. And Ward and Rachel will not be attending today. And I, as the chairman of the Board of County Commissioners, will be chairing this meeting. So I'm going to actually turn it over to Dave Pesnicek, who's going to take the ball and roll with it. Thank you, Dave.
My stuff organized here. All right, is my screen coming through okay for everybody? Okay, great. So as Patty discussed, this is the March 24th, 2022 EoTC meeting. This is being held at the Picken County Board of County Commissioners room and virtually. To looking at the agenda this afternoon, we've already gone through. I guess we didn't do roll call vote by jurisdiction.
Patty kind of called.
She
the
kinda
roll and
called the roll.
identified those
Yeah.
were in the meeting.
Okay.
I was being
Happy to
efficient.
do whatever you want.
We don't have an official procedure for that, but
No, we don't.
if you guys are comfortable with it, I'm okay with it.
Then
I
that
think
worked.
so.
That'll work.
Yeah.
Someone just say who's
Oh.
there in person.
Francie's trying to. Yep.
Have one of my typos.
Francie,
did-
can you repeat that,
She wants to
please?
know who's there
Francie,
in
what was that?
person.
Could you guys tell us who's there in person? Because those of us online, we can't really see them. And when Patty was introducing, there were other noises going on.
Okay, we have Alyssa Schenk from Snowmass Village. We have Skippy Mesro, we have John Doyle, and we have Tori and myself in the room. Everybody else is zooming in.
So we only have 3 commissioners.
That's correct. Steve is supposed to be joining us, but we have not seen him yet.
Okay.
And Kelly is out of town.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Francie, for being here, because you made our quorum. I appreciate it. All right, Dave, now let's get the ball rolling here.
All right, so we do have quorum for all of the EoTC member jurisdictions. To start off with, I'd like to get approval of the October 28th, 2021 action minutes, then take any public comment for items not on the agenda, then move on to the EoTC committee updates, committee member updates, and then we've got 3 agenda items. The first one is the Brush Creek Park and Ride to AABC and Trail Connection. The second one is a review of request for the access through the Brush Creek Park and Ride, and finally, an update on the EoTC retreat coming up next month.
All right, I'm going to add to this. Francie, so you know, Bill Madsen, the mayor of Snowmass, just joined us. Thank you, Bill. We appreciate your being here.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So we need a
I would make a
motion.
motion to approve the minutes of October 28th, 2021.
I'll second that. Greg?
I have a motion and I have a second by John. Greg, he beat you to it. So we need to call this by jurisdiction, correct, Dave?
Yes.
So Tori, would you please
For the
call?
city of Aspen, Skippy Mesereau,
Yes.
John Doyle,
Yes.
I should say
and
yes.
Tori, yes.
Dave, Bill, do you want to call the vote for your jurisdiction?
Sure, for Snowmass Village, Alyssa Shank,
Yes.
Bob Circus,
Yes.
Tom Fritzstein,
Hit your mic button.
Excuse me, yes.
and Tom Good.
Yes.
Bill Madsen, yes.
Okay, Board of County Commissioners, I have Greg Poshman
Yes.
and Francie,
Yes.
and myself, yes, and I still don't see Steve on. We don't have Steve yet. Does not appear. Okay, so the motion passes by each jurisdiction.
All right, thank you. So moving on to our first agenda item for this afternoon. This is the Brush Creek Park and Ride to AABC.
We need
Do you
to
have
open
public
public
comment?
comment.
Oh, sorry, I'm skipping ahead here.
So are there any members of the public wishing to comment on, technically on items not on our agenda? We are going to open public comment for the two voting items, yes. You found Steve? Well, we found Steve. He was lost in the attendees space.
Somewhere in the metaverse was Steve.
So no members of the public wishing to speak on items not on today's agenda? Tony, do you want to come forward?
Please, thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon to the members, the elected officials that are present here at the table, and also everyone that's on the Zoom meeting that's on the screen. And I wanted to I haven't been to an EoTC meeting for about a year and a half.
Welcome
And
back.
The last time,
Missed you.
I know.
I missed it.
Felt
Trust
empty.
me. I really missed it. But, and the last time that I was here was at the beginning of COVID, when we were having a lot of technical difficulties, and I kind of got clicked off. So what I want to do is pick up from where I left off when we got clicked off. But before I do that, I wanted to thank each individual jurisdiction for making our travels into town, into Snowmass, a lot better. Specifically, Snowmass, you're going to start pulling it together with a connectivity plan coming forward, and that is definitely long overdue. And then with the city of Aspen, with the lumberyard housing, that the trails that are going to be hopefully approved to be connecting, and then also with Picken County, with all of your oversight with everything. As you know, we still have the free buses between Aspen and Snowmass. So there's a lot of moving parts, but we still haven't really connected, and this is where I left off. We have not connected Snowmass to Brush Creek Park and Ride with the airport, now with the lumberyard housing, into Aspen with Snowmass, with one transportation system that actually reduces vehicles on the road, which is one of our EoTC's mission and value statements. And this is ironical, that it's exactly the same time last year, but you're going into a retreat, and you're going into a retreat coming up here, and what I would like for the elected officials to earnestly discuss is funding to do a feasibility study for an urban aerial connection. I know we've already looked at the rail, and that's really not feasible, one, because of the price tag, but when you think about it, every time that rail crosses an intersection, everybody's got to come to a stop. And that's, I don't think that, and it also has to go to a vote. And then the second thing is that with Snowmass, light rail cannot make it up to that grade. Rafted buses are at capacity, they can add no more. And we need everything that we have in place right now, but we need more than what we have in place right now. So I don't want to go into the benefits and the cons of an aerial system, and that's something that a feasibility study would do. And the feasibility study is only about $40,000. And as you know, I've undertaken quite a few lobby projects, and with the aerial connection, it's been going for 10 to 15 years now, making sure that we have different approvals in place. And so in earnest, that I would like to pick it up again, and if we have to bring it to a vote, we can bring it to a vote in Aspen and Snowmass, and then Picken County, which is kind of be overlooking everything, so to speak. And then when you think about the benefit of connecting the airport, we would be the only ski resort, the only ski resort that connects the parking lot with the ski areas, with the airport, and with housing. So, and then I just had a quick request, and that is on the opening page on the webpage for the EoTC, that it talks about a lot of the supporting documents. But one thing that is missing are the court cases that have revolved around the entrance to Aspen. And I think that's crucial to have those court cases on there, and I think that's probably Dave Pescin's check duty or responsibility, because when it finally comes down to whatever the city of Aspen decides they're going to do, guaranteed someone's gonna bring it to a vote somewhere. And so you're gonna have to fall back on the court cases, and one of the court cases very specifically says what's needed to be done if light rail goes in. But anyway, I've really missed everyone, and I'm glad I'm back. I hope I can make
I
the
just
next
saw
one.
you the other day, so.
I know, I had to laugh, that was funny.
So Dave, that's just something we might want to, when we were discussing the item for the retreat, if it's an agreement with the 3 jurisdictions to add something about the aerial tramway. Okay.
Thanks,
And
Jenny.
then you can, Dave, you can follow up with the county attorney on court cases if he feels it's appropriate to add them to the webpage.
Yeah, I can follow up on that.
Great.
Great, thank you so much, I
Thank you.
appreciate it. It's great to see everyone.
Welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Are there any other members of the public wishing to speak on items not on today's agenda? Okay. I am seeing none, so I'm going to close this public comment period. I will reopen the other ones when appropriate. And I'm going to move to the next item, Dave, right? The EoTC committee member updates.
Yes. That's for you all. If you've got any updates you'd like to share.
Does any members of the boards, either in the room or on Zoom, just let me know if anybody wants to speak now. I am not seeing any hands raised in either virtual or in person.
I think Bob might.
Bob got his hand
Bob,
up.
you have your,
Yeah, I'm sorry, I
Oh.
was trying to get
his hand blends
hand
with his
up
wall behind him.
online, I couldn't figure it out. Yeah, I just have a question. Why isn't the electronic sign on 82 showing any kind of a notice that the roundabout is under construction and people should look for alternative alternative ways to get there? I mean, I realize that it's slightly beyond, well, actually, I don't think so. I don't think it's beyond Smith Way. So it would be like the last opportunity for somebody to go in an alternative way into town. And since we put so much money into that thing and we seem to use it so little, I just wondered why we didn't use it for the roundabout.
I can respond to
Dave, go
that.
ahead.
So we have had discussions on the staff side in terms of when to turn that on, and where we've landed is that we should turn it on and start encouraging people to utilize the detour and alternative transportation at the time that the detour starts. So that would be mid-April is the time frame that we're looking at, really lighting that up and encouraging people. And the reason we haven't seen it lit up much over the last couple of years has honestly been COVID and hesitation around should we really be pushing people to transit right now and trying to avoid conflicting messages out to the public. So we've had some hesitation just from that perspective, but we're looking at lighting it up here next month.
Well, David, the other day when I drove into town, it was down to one lane going through the roundabout. So it seems to me that is affecting traffic, and it was backing up on 82 in both directions.
It is. We can further discuss it with CDOT and Picken County Public Works to see, if we'd want to do it sooner. But that's been our discussion so far, and I can bring that up to them if we want to move that time frame up.
Well, Bob, I think one of the questions might be though too, is the detour, quote unquote, not mandatory detour, ready up manned and ready to go yet? I think CDOT's waiting until the 1st of April to do that. So we don't want to be diverting people to that just yet without having everything in place to manage traffic flow and flagmen and whatever else we might need along the McLean Flats section and Lower River Road, or Upper River Road. So, but we can run it by CDOT and see when they're planning to gear up, right, Dave?
We can. So
Well,
yeah, sorry.
It's already causing, significant traffic delays. So I just want to point that out. We've spent the money on this thing, and it doesn't seem to me like we are making the appropriate use. So I appreciate the time to speak.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other members of the EoTC? Yeah,
Yeah, I
please,
think
sir.
just tagging on to Bob's comment there, I think it would be helpful for this board if we just had a report as to when that digital display board was used and what the messages were that were posted on those dates, just so we get an idea of how it's being used.
By history. Okay,
Patty?
yeah, please. Greg?
Greg here. Just want to report on the same note. The Smith Hill Way, McLean Flats route is often already choked. Going into town in the mornings, it's been backed up all the way almost to McLean Flats at times. On icy mornings and on your typical school mornings when you've got the additional school traffic. We're already seeing pretty intense traffic all the way down through Cemetery Lane or whatever it's called, Cemetery Lane. Just want to report that. So we're already looking at pretty high capacity in there. So suggesting that as an alternative route, I think we also need to alert people, or people should be prepared for lengthy delays on that road as well.
Okay, I think Dave's gonna reach out to CDOT and the Public Works to see where we can come to some mutual agreement here. Steve, please?
Yesterday I went into town. I parked at the Brush Creek Park and Ride. There were lots of parking places available there. I got on the bus that came along in just a couple of minutes. We went into town very quickly. The bus did have to get into the single lane traffic at the roundabout, but that is a good alternative for anybody to get into town, to just park your car and ride RAPTA in. And I highly recommend it.
Okay, thanks, Steve.
Question there. Is there a published schedule of roundabout construction?
CDOT is managing that. So Tracy Trulove is the best contact as their PIO for that project.
Because while this discussion was really about the messaging board, I think more importantly, as we're going into this summer, knowing what's coming with the construction, is that if we can get the messaging out to our community as best as possible about when those delays are going to be their worst, I think that would be very helpful. As Steve just said, there's a lot of transit availability. Maybe we really need to put on a push. I know that we've done some allocations for more buses. We've done some more allocation for communications. I know that's in the works, but as we get closer and closer, I think that we need to be paying careful attention to that, make sure that people know what the construction and when the construction impacts are going to be.
So the Board of Commissioners had a pretty lengthy presentation by CDOT, and I have that slide, so maybe we should send it on to the cities. I carry it with me, so when people ask me, I can whip out.
Carry it with me?
Yeah.
That's sad, Patty.
That's really bad. At the grocery store with my son about.
You could do the
this
sign
roundabout.
thing.
Yeah,
There's only
I
one,
know
but we,
that.
you know.
Yeah. I got to blow that one up a
The
little
public
bit,
service
but-
version.
Okay, Patty?
Yes.
I'm online. I don't know if you can see me.
Yes, I can see you, but yeah.
Get you some smiley
Okay,
faces.
so
But wait-
CDOT has a sub-website called Projects, and it has Colorado 82 Aspen Roundabout Project, and it has everything about the week and what you can do and all of that on it. It's not hard to access at all, and I think it's one of a couple of websites that are pretty clear about the construction and what your alternatives are, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Dave?
Yeah, that's the official website that people should be using to access that information.
Okay, any other questions? I'm pulling it out just so you guys know I really do carry it with me. Here it is right here. Do you guys have that?
Too
With
short.
all the contact
But
information.
real quickly, that's a link, and I appreciate a link, but what I'm saying is about putting this information in front of the public, in front of our valley, not just saying to people, no offense, not just saying to people, hey, there's a link on CDOT. I get that, but I mean, we all know how that works.
How do you want to put it to the,
I don't know. We have communication
Okay.
specialists. We need to get this word out. I mean, we are literally spending money on more buses and some transit opportunities, and this is an opportunity for us to really change some behavior throughout the valley where this is going to be as bad as it gets probably for some period. So this is a real great opportunity for us to mobilize people that are coming in and knowing. If they know it, then maybe they'll make that choice. But if they don't know it, they might not. So I'm just saying we should have this in front of our public up and down the valley as much as possible.
I think CDOT's going to be publishing it in local papers. Maybe we can speed that up a bit with all this information on how you can.
Yeah, I would need to touch base with Tracy Truelove on that to see
So
what
we'll have
her
to follow up on that.
plans are.
And I know
can't-
there's a lot of work going on with it. I just want to make sure that as we get closer to this, that it's robust.
Yeah, we better start it earlier than
To it,
later.
we're there.
I can
Yeah.
say too that the CDOT is utilizing their variable message signs up and down Highway 82 all the way starting in Glenwood Springs and Carbondale and then in Basalt, letting people know about the construction project. So there is utilization of signage already.
Yeah.
Well, I went out of town yesterday at rush hour through the roundabout, and there was less traffic and faster than it usually is on a normal day without it. So I don't know where people were going, but it was great for me because I was on the highway, so. All right, so any other comments or questions from members of the EOTC? Okay, I think we're good. Thank you, guys. Good points, and we'll follow up with, Dave will follow up with Tracy. Get that message out there, perfect. All right, now to the
All right.
fun stuff.
Now we're ready to start. Sorry, I jumped way ahead there at the beginning. I do want to, before we get into the agenda items, I do want to remind everybody about the EoTC vision, mission statement, and state statute and voter requirements as we do at the beginning of EoTC meetings. The EoTC does have a vision that states that we envision the Roaring Fork Valley as the embodiment of a sustainable transportation system, emphasizing mass transit and mobility that contributes to the happiness and well-being of residents and visitors. We also have a mission statement that states that we will work collectively to reduce and manage the volume of vehicles on the road and parking system, and continue to develop and support a comprehensive multimodal long-range strategy that will ensure the convenient, equitable, and efficient transportation system for the Roaring Fork Valley. That we are also bound by certain state statutes and voter requirements, notably that the EoTC must EoTC funds must be utilized for financing, constructing, operating, and managing the mass transportation system within the Roaring Fork Valley. And then we can get to the first agenda item of this afternoon. And this is the Brush Creek Park and Ride to AABC and Aspen Trail Connection. As you're all aware, this is a partnership project that is being funded 1/3 by Picken County Open Space and Trails, who is also leading the project, 1/3 by the City of Aspen Parks and Open Space, and 1/3 by the EoTC. The staff review team to date has consisted of the Picken County Open Space and Trails Department, the City of Aspen Parks and Open Space Department, the Snowmass Parks and Recreation Department, and myself as the Transportation Administrator. The result of this effort is a feasibility study that's been put together by SGM in 2021 and early 2022. The purpose of this feasibility study and the product that's before you this afternoon is to identify technically feasible hard surface ADA accessible trail connections between the Brush Creek Park and Ride and the AABC. What we're looking for in terms of an outcome from this meeting this afternoon is administrative direction to initiate the public process for identifying utilizing the identified trail connection options. I do want to emphasize that we're only looking for essentially that blessing to move into the public process at this point, so we're not looking for a determination on a preferred alternative from the feasibility study or allocating any funding for construction or even authorizing construction at this point. But because of the scope of the project, we want to get this in front of you to get your feedback before we move into the public phase. In terms of budget impacts, the EoTC has already budgeted $25,000 in 2022 for this public outreach project, and that is being matched by $25,000 from the City of Aspen Parks and Open Space Department and the Picken County Open Space and Trails Department, so that we have a total of $75,000 currently budgeted to move into the public phase of this project. And then looking at, from the EoTC perspective, this project does further several of the regional priorities and Upper Valley priorities from the 2020 EoTC Comprehensive Valley Transportation Plan, or CVTP. The regional priorities that are promoted include the park and ride lot improvements, first and last mile solutions, as well as transit accessibility enhancements. We're also promoting a couple of the Upper Valley priorities, including the bicycle and pedestrian connections to transit stops and the Brush Creek Park and Ride, as well as the airport and AABC multimodal transit hub and transit circulation enhancements. I do want to make you aware that this feasibility study has been reviewed by the Pickens County Open Space and Trails Board in a joint meeting with the City of Aspen Parks and Open Space Board on February 24th, so about a month ago. And as an overview of the comments received, I think the main comment is that they did recommend moving forward into the public process in 2022 utilizing the two technically feasible alignments. They did identify a general preference for option one, which is known as the twin bridges, which SGM will go over here in a few minutes in terms of their options. And they also identified several aspects for us to look into as we move into the public process for more information. So the first one that they identified was the bicycle commute time to Aspen, and not just looking at going from the park and ride to the AABC, as well as a need for commuter studies to determine how many cars could be taken off the road should this connection be constructed, as well as the feasibility of this connection as a winter connection or commuter route. They also had some concerns about whether the 10-foot wide trail would provide enough capacity if it is being utilized for both recreation and commuter traffic. And they also asked staff to look into phasing the project over time and to look at what issues that could create should the project be phased. So that's just an overview of the comments that we received from that joint meeting. But at this point, I would like to turn it over to Gary Tannenbaum, the Pickens County Open Space and Trails Director, and Austin Weiss, the City of Aspen Parks and Recreation Director, to talk a little bit about procedurally how we got here to this feasibility study, as well as the existing conditions that are on the ground. I've got a couple of slides here that were provided by the Open Space and Trails Department. And once they finish, they'll turn it over to SGM to run through the details of the feasibility study itself.
Gary, would you like to kick us off here?
Sure. Yeah, it's unusual because Austin and I do really well when we're sitting next to each other, so it'll be interesting to see. I'm sitting at the library in Cortez, so I think my Wi-Fi should be able to handle this. Anyway, I'm Gary Tannenbaum. I'm the director of Pickens County Open Space and Trails. I think I know almost all of you. I've been in front of all the boards in the past. And so, you know, to go over the history of this, you know, really starts back in 2010. You know, we did, Pickens County Open Space and Trails did a overall trail gap analysis throughout the entire county. And we identified a whole bunch of gaps, a whole bunch of, you know, things that we'd like to look at. Obviously, this one was included in that. And then from that, we did a Rio Grande Trail and a Roaring Fork Gorge, which the gorge is that beautiful stretch of river all the way from, you know, like Stein Park all the way through to Jaffe Park. And when we were looking at that feasibility, we were looking at trying to create a connection, a hard surface connection from the city of Aspen to Down Valley. And when we were looking at that, one of the things that came up in that analysis was, how do we connect that to the ABC? And how do we connect that to Snowmass Village? Because, you know, over the years, town of Snowmass Village and the city of Aspen have been incredible partners with us. And we look at this trail system overall as kind of a hub and spoke system. And where do we have these hubs? Where do we have these spokes? And how do we connect them all to make it a recreation? And that's, you know, we're yes, it would be great to get, we have tons of commuting that happens on the Rio Grande and many others, but we do look at this as a recreation, a major recreation kind of gap. And so for us, it's in 2014, we looked at the feasibility and decided to just move forward with the first phase of the Rio Grande Trail paving, which paved from McLean Flats Road to kind of almost to the Shale Bluffs area on the Rio Grande Trail side. And then, you know, we had an option, and we brought it to the Open Space Board and the BoCC to potentially do bridge back over to the Brush Creek Park and Ride. And at the time, you know, it was a significant cost. Now it's more, but at the time, the BoCC wanted to take a small step and see where it led. And, you know, now we kind of see where that has gone, and we see more recreation people using the park and ride. And currently it's really difficult because it seems like we have this connection, but it is not anywhere that you would call direct. You have to drop 250 feet. You've got it's an extra almost, I think it's an extra almost 1.5 miles to 2 miles. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong on that one, but they actually made a lovely little graphic for it. And honestly, people would be using it if, it was more feasible. So, and we've always been partnering with the city of Aspen. That's why Austin and I are kind of tag teaming this. But from the county perspective, we're looking at this as a huge recreation resource, and to stop people at the Brush Creek Park and Ride and have that be a hub to Snowmass, have that be a hub to people who want to ride into Aspen, have people who want to ride, Sky Mountain Park or road bike up to the Maroon Bells or to Castle Creek Road or even the Pass and Woody Creek. This is kind of the hub. And so that's why we're really interested in, during the Open Space Board presentation, they kind of looked at one option being the only. We didn't necessarily want to knock the other ones out yet because we felt like going to the public process with more than one option was really critical. So with that, I could turn it over to Austin to add from the city perspective.
Yeah, thanks so much, Gary. And I will add just another layer of detail from the city's perspective here. Obviously, the city has the same goals of reducing the number of cars on Highway 82, and I think every time we have one of these construction projects, this year it's the roundabout. A couple of years ago, it was the Castle Creek Bridge and that pedestrian connection. And it highlights the need to get vehicles off the road and provide alternative routes for folks and multimodal access. When we look at it from the city's perspective in the recreation lens, the city has a lot of interest in this area as well. I guess first and foremost, we've got Cozy Point Ranch, which is a city asset, city-owned open space with the farm collaborative and the equestrian operations there. And we've talked a lot about the desires to provide access to that asset from Aspen, from other points in the community. We've got a myriad of open spaces throughout that zone that are either owned by the city of Aspen or owned jointly with Pitkin County, and as Gary indicated, a lot of recreational assets in that area as well. So Gary's absolutely right. We've approached so many of these projects as a partnership. I think that partnership has allowed us to achieve much more than we would have otherwise, and the city is very interested in looking carefully at this opportunity and giving it serious consideration of whether this is something we should tackle together.
Before we move to SGM, can I just see if there's any questions from the board members?
Mhm.
So does anybody have any questions to this point before we go to the engineering discussion? Tori, please.
I do, but I'll wait.
Okay.
Patty, Greg here.
Okay. Greg, go ahead, please.
Oh.
and then-
Just the questions is I want to go back before we launch into this, just to go look at the assumptions made about the criteria that led us to these choices. And I think that's as far as I'm going to go with my question. But I have to say I am concerned because the assumptions and the criteria we created for this have basically made it so expensive that it's an really expensive undertaking. I know people have balked in the past, and I'd really hate to see us kill this because we, it just seems like we've gone for the most expensive possible options. So I'd love to hear, I'd love you to prove me wrong, or at least demonstrate why I'm wrong with that assumption. Thanks.
Well, and I can take that. I mean, Greg, it's a tough one because, these construction projects are expensive. They were expensive in 2014, and that's why people balk at them because, but now it's even more expensive. Plus, you'll hear from SGM, we are putting a pretty large contingency on this because we just don't know, and we know it's not going to be constructed in 2023 or 2024 potentially. It could be 2025. So it adds a layer of uncertainty and unknowns. But you know, we thought about other options, and one of the options, you know, trying to go closer to the river and try to come back up, and that just takes away, you know, it almost says let's kind of take away the ADA option and make it, and then you have the environmental, you know, the environmental piece of bringing it down towards the river and back up on the kind of the shale bluff area would be huge. I mean, that would be a huge disturbance to a relatively, even though it's right next to a highway, the trail's on the other side, when you drop into that canyon, it is a relatively untouched area. Yes, we have anglers down there, and on the Jaffe Park side, for a certain portion, they have, you know, some walkers and people and fishermen on that side, but, you know, that would be huge to do that. So, you know, looking at this as a way to both connect the recreation community and the commuting, you know, these were the options that, you know, we tasked SGM with finding, and they could lead into that a little bit more. I don't know, Austin or Dave, did you have any other?
No, and I think you summed it up well, Gary. You know, specifically when you look at the commuter aspect of this connection, when you start to think about dropping all the way down to the river level and back up, it certainly starts to discourage maybe not so much the e-bike crowd, but certainly the traditional bicyclist that might be commuting. It becomes a much different dynamic dropping down there and climbing back out, very similar to what we have today with the trail down to Jaffe Park.
If I could, just the assumptions that I wanted to address would be, one, that it's a 10-foot wide or perhaps wider trail. Two, that it is ADA compliant, which means there's a grade profile for grade. Three, it's a hard surface, which means it's probably going to be paved. And then the last one was just, I wanted just, when we have a chance to go into the detail about not wanting to build a bridge from the unpaved section on Rio Grande Trail, just that was a separate thing. But so the assumptions are it's got to be paved. It has to have the grade profile to be ADA compliant, and it has to be 10 feet wide. I think those are elements which make it very expensive, and I just wonder if the perfect will be the enemy of the good here. And so I don't want to go deeper into that now, but I wanted to just put that on the floor for future conversation. Thanks.
Thanks, Greg. And then I have Francie, Steve, and then I saw, Tom, you had your hand up. So let's get Francie here.
Okay, Gary, you know where I'm going. We're not strangers on these topics. So if the main purpose is recreational, is there some reason why they can't go down at Gerbaz Land and come along the bike trail and come up on Cemetery Lane and go that way? Because if it's recreational, what does a little bit of distance really matter? That's one of my questions. And then on the commuting side, I really find it hard to believe that it's going to take a lot of cars off the road. I mean, are you expecting that people will ride the bus with their bikes to the Brush Creek lot and then get off the bus and get on their bike? And I just had a conversation with a bunch of people from Colorado who were here in Mexico with me to ask them what they thought. And nobody could picture that happening, that people arriving at the Brush Creek lot and then biking into town or whatever. I just don't see it for the price tag. I don't see it taking that many cars off the road. That's my second point. And then you were talking about the untouched nature of the river through there. So why don't we just leave it untouched? We do so many things in the guise of environmentalism that, to me, in the long run, aren't really environmentalism. So with buses already going up to Aspen and bike trails everywhere to get to Aspen, I don't see this as an environmental step forward. I see it as an incredible encroachment on the river with two bridges. And it's going to be a hard sell for me, I'll be honest. Gary, I know that's not a surprise to you, but I don't see it, but I hope that people will convince me. I've read the engineering report really closely, and I don't see it, so it's going to take some salesmanship to bring me on board.
Okay, thanks, Francie. Steve Chow?
Thank you, Patty. One alternative that was not looked at, which I mentioned in our BoCC meeting on this, is the idea of putting the bike trail on the Shale Bluff side of the highway. This could be done by just widening the traffic lanes there and doing some kind of delineators on the highway. So they would be on an extension of the pavement of the highway, but would be separated from the flow of the traffic of the highway by delineators of some kind. The other option would be to actually put the bike trail in a tunnel. I'm doing quotes, tunnel. It would be like a snow shed that would protect the trail from debris or snow coming off of Shale Bluffs. The train used to go through a tunnel at Shale Bluffs, and this would be kind of restarting a historic, redoing a historic aspect of traveling by Shale Bluffs. So neither one of those alternatives was looked at by SGM. I think that probably the one with delineators on the highway would be much less expensive and maybe more plausible.
Steve, I can answer that. We didn't look at the tunnel, but we did look at putting it on the other side at Shale Bluffs. And it's SGM can kind of talk about that piece. It is just not as feasible and easy as you make it seem. It's a lot more difficult to get, a full 10-foot width trail on that side. So we looked at other options, and I could let SGM, as they do their presentation, talk about that. The tunnel, I can't imagine that being that much cheaper, but I did not even envision a tunnel under all of that.
And then I do have one other thing having to do with the cost of doing the elevated bike trail alongside Shale Bluffs with the price tag that was. I guess I'll talk about that later when we get to that part of the presentation on the cost estimates on the other alternative, but I'll bring that back.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Tom, good. I think you had your hand up.
Yes, I did. Thank you so much, everybody. So years ago, many years ago, back in the 70s, we used to have a bridge that when we kept our horses at, it was called Polecat. This is before the Maroon Creek Club was started and so on. And we crossed the bridge and we used to ride on the Rio Grande Trail. I don't know if that bridge is still there anymore, but if that bridge was available to go from the Aspen or from the business center to get to the Rio Grande Trail and then pave the Rio Grande Trail at that point to get up to Brush Creek Road, you still have to ride up a hill one way or another, whether it's the Woody Creek bike trail or something. I know it's a killer, but that's the way it goes. A lot of the e-bikes these days, they have no problem going up there, but so on. I don't, maybe somebody could tell me if that bridge is still there, if we have access to it, or if the option for paving the riverside and also paving from where it beams the tower from up above the Rio Grande Trail into Aspen. So that way people have options, whether it's up high or down low, one way or another.
Thanks, Tom. Does anybody know if that bridge he's talking about is? There is a bridge down there, but I don't think it's the bridge he's talking about.
No, Patty, are you talking about the bridge next to the bridge that goes to Chaffee Park, or are you talking about the old bridge abutments that were down further along? Because it was the old county wagon road down there at one time, and there was a bridge.
Correct, Gary. There used to be a bridge that we used to walk our horses across. I'm saying back in 74, 75. There was a bridge that we walked our horses across and got on the Rio Grande Trail. And we called it the Polecat Ranch, but that was before the Maroon Creek Club was started there and so on. I assume that bridge is still there.
It's the Stein Bridge. You're
Okay.
talking about the one that's further towards the ABC?
That's probably correct.
That's the Stein Bridge, yes, that is still there.
Okay, so do we have access to that, Gary?
Yeah, we have a trail down there to it.
So
It
is-
connects
is-
the ABC back up to the Rio. And so, yes, the current way you can connect all this is to, you can kind of see
That's the one that crosses
on the
over,
map
then you
there.
come back up.
Right.
That's that current connection there.
I
So
see that.
That's there now.
Okay, so
Cross over, come back up.
why not just follow the existing path and just pave the Rio Grande Trail for hard road bikes and hard bikes or whatever, or does it even have to be paved? I don't just have access one way or another.
Well, and that's part of this whole public process, because there's always the do nothing option.
Right.
Or just improve what we got. We've already approved, the hard surface ends in a certain spot because the public was very divided on paving it through Slaughterhouse Canyon. And so, that was at the time, kind of where the Board of County Commissioners said, we'll pave it to Slaughterhouse, leave it to, and then upgrade the soft surface. And that's the way it is now. And then we improve that bridge, the Stein Bridge, and improve the soft surface to it and the soft surface back up. So, through this whole conversation, there is the do nothing option. It's just that right now the do nothing option is not being utilized the way, it would be utilized if we did bridges. So the feasibility is really to talk to you guys about, do we move forward even with the public process? Because we have seen public input that would indicate support for it. But, now that we have numbers and everything, would the public really support it at this level or not? So that's really what we're asking for today, is to go further with that or not.
Okay, so Gary, years ago, a lot of people had public comment about paving Owl Creek Road, and then it was paved in parts, and then it finally was paved totally. And now it is an access that everybody needs from Snowmass Village to Aspen. So it's almost the same thing. Why not bring it up again?
Okay.
I'm talking about the paved part. You're talking about years ago there was public comment about not wanting that paved, but why not bring it up again?
Good question to, it's Board of County Commissioners controls that piece with the Open Space Board, and so that can be, if that's one of the things that you guys want to come out of that too, is we could ask the public about that piece too. And that's the direction we're looking for today, is to see where you guys are at on going to a public process to determine what we do with this. And one of the options always is, here's existing, and maybe people are ready to pay it, maybe they're not.
Thanks, Gary. Appreciate that.
Okay, I have two members of City Council. Skippy, you
Sorry.
went out because you were going to
Yeah,
throw
I've just
something at
gotten
me.
generally confused. This is the first time I've kind of looked at this project, so I'm playing catch up. With all those comments around bridge, the image that we're looking at right now, this is the existing condition, correct? Okay. That really confused me. Okay. I'll wait for the rest of the presentation.
And the bridge Tom is talking about is the loop at the very bottom where you come up valley, cross. over, and come back
This
up.
to me looked like what I do and not what we're trying to go to. But hearing
Right.
all of those comments, I got very confused and thought perhaps this is where we also want to go. And then I had very different comments that I would have otherwise had. So I'll sit back and listen for a while.
Just let me know. Just throw something at me next time you want to speak.
I'm going to bring darts. He will.
Story. Then I can die.
This is very interesting, where two causes meet. We have both recreational trail system and then the possible application of commuter benefits and actual taking some commuter traffic off the road. So my question really leads to, what is the scope of the study that is looking at being done, the public outreach? The wording and the way that this is written in our packet doesn't really lead me to understand if the questions are going to be on a commuter-based usage or if it's going to be on recreational and trail usage. I hear what Francie was talking about with some some concern and doubt about what it means to commuter traffic and taking actual cars off the road. So I'm wondering, with this, if we were to approve these funds, what is the scope and nature of this public outreach? What are we going to actually find? As it's written in here, it just talks about the public's desire based on current design options. But are we really going to get at any numbers that will talk to us about commuter and transit impacts?
Do you want to answer that?
I can start off. I don't know if Austin and Gary want to jump in also, but we haven't entirely fleshed out what the scope is of the public process at this point. We know that we need to go into a public process, and that public process needs to include both recreational and commuters, and that the public process needs to go down valley, so that we need to know the opinion of those who live down valley and might actually come up and use it as a commuter route. I would caution as well, just from my perspective, drawing a hard line between the commuter and the recreational rider. I think that there's oftentimes, there's oftentimes overlap. You know, you might have previously driven all the way into town, but you might stop there because then you get your exercise in coming into town, that kind of thing. And that is also taking a car off the road. Similarly, we might have users who might have already driven into town, either Snowmass or Aspen, to utilize a trail system, but if they can stop down valley, then that also limits the vehicle miles traveled for that recreational trip. So I just cautioned the drawing a hard line between commuter and recreational user, and to a certain extent, a vehicle trip is a vehicle trip, and a bicycle or pedestrian trip is just that. So really looking at number of users is important in this case too.
So let me just real quick, and then I'll go to you, Skippy. So isn't there the possibility that people could just ride to Buttermilk and park there and then take the existing trails into Aspen and get their exercise?
That does currently exist,
Okay,
yes.
just want to make sure, or they could come back to the ABC from Buttermilk because we got a great trail connection there, especially if we eventually put in that underpass or put in the little bike lane in front of the inn at Aspen. So just things to keep in mind as we move forward and looking at dollar value and cars off the road. Skippy, please.
Yeah, it's okay. So I was trying to think about how to get my thoughts into this project, which is kind of in place. But, you know, kind of, Dave, to what you were talking about, that's the thing that I kept thinking about. And I would agree with you. We can't say that there's this one person is a commuter and this other person is recreational. That's certainly not how it works. I think it's also not fair to say that if you're on a bike versus a car, that's the distinction, right? I mean, I think, and we've talked about this a lot as it relates to the lumberyard and going into town, you know, the kind of future that we hope we get into is actually there's like three modes, right? There's the car solution, which we hope to leave behind. Then there's the sort of transit e-highway or e-bike highway where you actually want people to be going really quickly, and you know that is the substitute for the car because in many cases it's faster, it's more convenient. And then you have the recreational sort of like linger and mingle trail where people are intentionally going slower. And so I've been trying to figure out how we tease that apart. I don't have a solution for how we segment that. You know, I don't know if it's 7 feet for one and 3 for the other, or we really guide people. Like the linger and mingle is the long way where there is a lot of up and down, and the whole point is to get lost and find whimsy in nature. And the other one is that direct shot as much as possible. But it seems to me that building that in is important. And to Francie's point, you know, that's a great start, right? Like you need the artery for the blood to flow, but like unless you have the liquid or the lubricant or the life force, it's not going to go. And so, you know, Francie, like some people will drive in with their bike with the intention of leaving it there because it's a better, more enjoyable solution. But, you know, I could also see the situation where what you actually need is like bike lockers. Right? I mean, we all like laugh. We tried that once before, but it's like, you know, it's like your locker at the base of the mountain where if you live not right in the core, it's so nice to show up and your gear is warm and there's coffee there, you know, so if you just leave your e-bike and your road bike on any given day, you can choose to be one of those. So I apologize for just rambling, but I'm just wondering how we get at and plan for those distinctions, and is that included within the scope of this? I'm just kind of generally confused about how that conversation fits in with this.
Part of the public scoping, I would imagine.
It is. We certainly need to get into those, everything that you described.
Okay.
And we haven't put it down on paper yet to say this is our specific scope at this point. We're waiting for this go-ahead to really launch in and put the resources in to put that together. But we fully recognize that we need to put in that effort, and we need to get those answers.
And specifically, one of the things that we have already talked about, making sure as a part of that scope, is to Francie's question about trying to figure out a way to identify the number of cars we might potentially be able to get off the road. So that's definitely part of that.
Yeah, and I mean, that one, like, it needs to be really convenient, faster, and enjoyable. And I guess in my mind, the conflict between the kind of e-highway and the like linger mingle crowd is like as bad or worse than the car and the bike is already. So like we really need to figure that out.
Yeah, and I will just add that those types of arterial connections are being designed and built in other locations. Most recently, I've heard of one between, I believe it's Longmont and Boulder, where it is geared for that e-cyclist who will be going faster, and there will be more of them. So.
And John Doyle.
Just a couple things. So I ride mountain bikes and road bikes a lot, and there's a difference on where you can ride road bikes and mountain bikes. And currently the trail as it's set up does work just fine for mountain bikes if you don't mind going all the way down in the canyon and all the way back up the other side. And if you're on a road bike, that means if you come down Brush Creek Road, normally I will cross the road at Smith Way, and then you have to ride up very steep W/J hill. Which leads me to my next point, which is with the traffic things that we're going to be faced with, the roundabout this summer, and eventually the entrance to Aspen, there will be conflicts. There's going to be more traffic on Cemetery Lane and Missouri Heights, the road, that back road coming into town, and I just think that it would be wise to get bike car conflicts separate, and so I think this trail is a great idea, because we will be seeing increased traffic during these congestion periods, and people are going to get frustrated, and this will give them an option to get on their bikes and ride from the Brush Creek lot into town without having to go down, all the way down into the gulch and all the way back up the other side. We got to make it easy for bicyclists.
And just remember, keep in mind that we're looking at an out year of 24-25. So this could be done by about the time the entrance to Aspen is done, John, so.
You think the entrance to Aspen's going to be done by 24-25?
So, I'm going to bring us back to SGM, because I think we need a little engineering talk here.
I'll put money on that.
If you do that, I'm going to
And I
bow
don't
out.
bet.
I'm actually going to take my vacation now. I've had my say.
All
I'm
right.
going to go to dinner with my family. Best to all of you. I think you have a county quorum now without me.
Thank
you so much.
So I just want to remind the Board of Commissioners, the three of us need to stay on, because we're the only ones that make up the quorum now. Okay, thanks,
Thank you,
Francie.
guys. Appreciate it.
So nobody else can leave the room, or the meeting, so we're all here. Okay, SGM, the floor is yours, please.
Great.
You can tell we're like chomping at the bit for this engineering discussion.
Awesome. All right, thank you so much, you guys, for being here today and giving us the time to chat with you about the feasibility of a couple options we've been looking at for the past few months here. My name's Ashley Klein. I didn't know how we did the last one, Austin and Gary. You guys kind of introed kind of these first couple slides. Do we feel like we covered these well enough already, or
I think we did.
you want me to skip forward? Okay, great. All right. All right, so looking here, we've pretty much come up with two separate options for a trail connection from Brush Creek Park and Ride to the Aspen Airport Business Center. Like Gary had previously mentioned, we had flushed out quite a few options just throughout this process that we really felt weren't very feasible and weren't worth moving forward on. And some of those options are highlighted in our report if you guys have taken the time to look at that. So right here, we're kind of dealing with two options. The first option is in the red dashed line you see here, and we're calling this option, as you've been hearing the terminology, the twin bridges alignment. And our second option is this pink line here, and we're calling that option the State Highway 82 East alignment. And then this this black segment you see here is would be utilized by both options, so either option 1 or option 2. So that is the same for both alignments there. So option 1, we have a bridging over the Roaring Fork River from Brush Creek Park and Ride, and it will connect to the existing Rio Grande Trail. Move along about a mile of existing trail, and then cross back over the Roaring Fork River in a bridge that we're calling the Aspen Airport Business Center Bridge, and then move along adjacent to 82 and terminate at the main intersection of the Airport Business Center. So that's just a general overview of both alignments.
Can I ask a real quick question?
Sure.
Who owns the land where that second bridge would cross?
Yes, so we are going to get to that. Okay. That is the bridge, the ABC bridge right there is going to land on Pitkin County property right there, just north of the Sardi property, that house right there.
Okay, because we have a concern, because some of that is managed and under the airport guys. It was purchased with airport monies and needs to be utilized for airport purposes. Is that not right, Dave?
I'm not familiar with those details in particular.
Just to bring it to your attention, there's a piece of land in there that has to be used for purposes associated with the airport.
So yeah, Patty, we're aware of that.
Okay.
And so remember, we made a deal with the airport, and we have part of that is open space, and airport kept the piece that they need.
Okay.
So we're aware of that.
Yeah, we just need to be clear, because we don't want FAA coming back and asking us to purchase that land back. I mean, to yeah.
No, we're well aware of that.
Just to make sure that alignment is clean. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no worries. All right, so to just go into a little bit more detail, we'll go into more detail about obviously both options here. But first and foremost, option 1, our twin bridges alignment. Again, the red segments here, bridge over the Roaring Fork River, utilizing the Rio Grande Trail, and then bridging back over to the Aspen Airport Business Center. So this alignment, as well as the other one, have both been designed vertically and horizontally. So this curvature you see here meets current design standards, as well as we're meeting ADA design criteria in this area. Both alignments are going to be 10-foot paved concrete trails or asphalt trails, and again, yeah, meet ADA requirements. So another really great benefit of this alignment option here is that we're obviously connecting Snowmass Village to the Rio Grande Trail in a much more efficient linear, sort of way, instead of having to go down and around. So we see a big benefit in this alignment to connecting the town of Snowmass Village to the Rio Grande, as well as the WJ Ranch neighborhood also gains connectivity to the Park and Ride, as well as the town of Snowmass Village. So we see that as being a really big benefit with this alignment. So again, another nice thing about this alignment is we are utilizing existing infrastructure, right? We're utilizing about a mile of existing Rio Grande Trail. We're not building unnecessary more trail. We're not spending more money than is needed to make this connection. So we have about 1.5 miles of new trail construction for a total of 2.5 miles of trail. So that would take you, just to give you an idea, if you ride your bike at 12 miles an hour, that'd give you about a ride time of about 13 minutes into the ABC.
Can I ask one clarifying question?
Yep.
So the existing portion of the Rio Grande Trail that gets used in this,
Yep.
is that simply widened to 10 total feet? Are we adding 10 feet, or is that part staying the same?
It should be staying the same. That is currently
That's
10
staying the
feet
same.
wide.
It is
Yep.
currently 10 feet wide.
Yeah, Skippy, that's a current 10-foot wide asphalt, and that also has a soft surface alternative to it as well. So,
On the, yeah.
yeah, we've got that dual
Yep.
surface, if you will.
Yep.
I guess I'm not good at estimating 10 feet because I ride it all the time.
Yeah, that's a really good point Austin brought up, and I think someone brought up earlier about why we chose the location for that second bridge. And we really did choose that because, you know, we want to be able to keep this trail, you know, potentially accessible and usable year round. And this gives us the option, since there already is that soft surface trail that's separate, that's used for Nordic skiing in the winter, that would still be able to be utilized, as well as, you know, potentially being able to plow this in the winter and be able to use, you know, this trail year round. So that's really why we chose this location, because if you move the bridge any further to the south, you're in an unpaved situation on the Rio Grande, and it would become very difficult to accommodate Nordic and you know, year-round traffic. So just a little bit more background on why we chose that location for the ABC bridge. And I'm going to turn it over to Mark to discuss in more detail the two bridges for this alignment.
Thanks, Ashley. So I'm Mark Frymoyer, structural engineer with SGM. So with this twin bridges alignment, as Ashley mentioned, there will be two bridges. So I'm going to kind of talk about those two crossings in a little bit more detail. So the first bridge, which is on the northern end of the alignment, we're calling the Brush Creek Bridge. That bridge abutment, or that bridge would take off on the southeast corner of the park and ride, and then fly over the river and land on the Aspen Consolidated Sanitation District property on the east side of the river. So this bridge would be 12 feet wide, or 12 feet clear trail width, and 592 foot length. So our project partner, our project landscape architect, DHM Design, put together a couple renderings that we'll kind of talk about for the rest of this presentation. So the top rendering is basically standing on the Rio Grande Trail and looking southwest to kind of towards the Highway 82 bridge over Shell Bluffs, with the proposed bridge in the foreground. And then the lower image is basically the opposite of that. So that's standing on the State Highway 82 bridge over Shell Bluffs and looking back down valley with the bridge in the foreground again. So that is the Brush Creek Bridge. The second bridge, which Ashley touched on, is what we're calling the AABC Bridge. So the Aspen Airport Business Center Bridge, which is on the southern end of the proposed alignment. So again, this bridge will take off where we have kind of the parallel soft surface, the parallel soft surface and hard surface trail sections. And so this takeoff spot is about 250 feet north of where those two parallel trail sections join back in, just to give you an idea of where that is. And then that'll fly back over the back over the Roaring Fork and land. There's kind of a nice broad flat bench there that's north of the Sardi property and kind of just south of where Owl Creek is. And as we said, that would be on county property. So again, this bridge will also be 12 feet wide. The total bridge length the total bridge length will be 655 feet. And then we have a couple of renderings here as well of what that would look at. So the rendering on top would be kind of the new trail that would connect the abutment on the State Highway 82 side, kind of back over to the Airport Business Center. So that's kind of looking at that new trail sort of back towards the existing Rio Grande. And then the lower rendering is standing on the Rio Grande Trail just north of the bridge and looking up valley. So it's a little grainy, but you can kind of make out like Highlands and Buttermilk in the background here, just to orient yourself. So with kind of the study that SGM did, we sort of did two alternative studies. So one is kind of the alignment alternatives, which which Ashley touched on. So these bridges are associated with the first alternative. And then with that, we also did kind of a structure feasibility study. And as part of that, we looked at 3 different bridge types. And the report goes into quite a bit of detail on those 3 different bridge types. And I'd certainly love to answer questions on them if people have questions on kind of the other alternatives we looked at. But what we settled on was something that matches the tie-hack bridge. So I'm sure we're all really familiar with this bridge, and so this is kind of the structure type you saw in those renderings. For a crossing of this length, this is probably the most. I mean, this is certainly the most efficient structure type. Use the least amount of steel, and one of the other kind of criteria we were looking at is we wanted an underhung structure. So basically the meat of everything that's holding the bridge up, we wanted it to be under the deck. So what that does for us is that, you're not going to hide these bridges, but, it's not like a big, tall suspension bridge where, you're going to see it from everywhere. So the goal is to really kind of make it as conspicuous as possible and kind of blend in, with the gorge as much as possible. So this is the structure type we settled on. We looked at 2 others and priced one of the other alternatives, but this was the lowest cost and kind of for the project team, we felt like it met the aesthetic that we were looking for and kind of the project goals, the best of the 3 that we looked at. So
What's the guesstimate cost of a bridge?
So we'll touch on it. So there's a
must be cheap.
yeah. So the when we get into the kind of the cost portion, we have sort of the 2 alignments broken out. So there's the trail portion and there's the bridge portion, and so that's kind of all broken out. And I have the number off the top of my head, but I'm probably going to be wrong. So I'll let the expert discuss that in greater detail. So those are the 2 structures on alignment option 1. So I'm going to turn it back over to Ashley to touch on alignment option 2, which is the State Highway 82 east alignment.
Great, thank you. Tom Good, did you have a question here? Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
I got 2 hands up.
You're muted.
Mute. Thanks.
1 second. Thank you so much, everybody. So I do. The young man that just spoke from SGM, the most efficient type of bridging. First of all, they're beautiful bridges. And if anybody's ever taken a bike across or walked across the Tyack Bridge, it is beautiful. It's a beautiful structure. And now, what's the difference in cost between paving the old bridge that I talked about? I called it the old polecat bridge, but I know it's got a different meaning now, Gary, as well. But what's the difference between that cost and paving the bike path and then let people climb up the hill and drive down the hill, ride up the hill and climb down the hill and so on, as opposed to the bridge? I mean, there's got to be a big difference in cost.
The only thing that I would say, Tom, I don't think we have a specific cost for that, but I think one of the main objectives from all project partners was to make sure that any trail connection we built was ADA compliant, which would not be the case with the existing Stein Bridge connection, because you do have to go down such a substantial grade and then come back up again on that ABC trail. So I think we didn't really look at cost comparisons of that because that just didn't meet one of our main project goals.
Yeah, and I would just add a little bit, that Stein Bridge is used frequently as a recreational connection. The connections on both sides are steep, but specifically on the Burlingame side, I think as far as a cyclist goes, there are folks that ride down to the bridge, but you would likely be pushing your bike up the other direction if you were heading back toward the Burlingame or the AABC on the existing trails.
So first of all, I am talking recreational because, I find it hard to believe that anybody, with the monsoons coming in the afternoon and so on, that it's going to be, well, maybe some people will, make that commute, of course. But I am, as I said, talking recreational. But anyway, I'm looking to save money, and the way to save money is to use what we have and pave what we have, and look at the difference in cost and so on. That's all I'll say. Thank you so much, everybody.
And I have another
Ashley,
question.
Ashley, thank you so much.
Thanks, Tom. Would not then, if Tom's idea with the Stein Bridge, would that not interfere with the Nordic use in the winter then? Because wouldn't it be past where the pavement ends and the gravel?
There would be potential conflicts there. I don't know if it's feasible to have a paved trail connection through that entire corridor. Again, especially on the, I guess I would call it the Burlingame AABC side of the river there.
Right.
A paved connection through that would be very difficult, I would imagine. So without having a paved connection, plowing is not really an alternative.
Right, yeah, I just wanted to bring that up.
And,
Yeah.
and Austin, I can also, we looked at that during the feasibility study. We looked about trying to do a different bridge than the Stein Bridge, a little bit higher, to try to get the same grade as the Rio, between the Rio and the ABC side. But you're talking a pretty long bridge. It was expensive, and then you'd have to pave into that part of the Rio Grande. So you're not you wouldn't be saving a ton of money on that section, because if you try to keep it at the same level where you don't have to pave a really super steep shot up to the ABC. So, the goal of the thing was to try to avoid that. But, we will ask that question during the public comment period if people want to see the Rio paved through Slaughterhouse. I mean, we've heard that pretty clearly, that that needs to be part of this. And there's also a phasing piece that we need to talk about during a public process if we move that far.
Okay, thanks, Gary. And I think the other thing we need to keep thinking about too is putting two bridges across what we've all preserved as the pristine Roaring Fork Gorge. Has an environmental and scenic impact that I think I'd like to see how the community feels about that, because you know how they sometimes feel about bridges in their face on a viewplane. So that might be the hard sell there. And as far as maintenance of option 1 versus maintenance of option 2, and trying to keep it so people can use it year round if we're talking commuters, but just food for thought for if we move forward to a public process. So we're going to go to the fun side of the river. And we do appreciate Steve Child's comments about putting in a tunnel, and we did remind him when he brought that up with the BoCC that shale has a tendency to fall down the hill, and we don't want it running over a shelter like an avalanche shelter onto the traffic lane. So it would be interesting, but Steve always comes up with some ideas that we should always take under consideration. So now we have the next presentation of the option 2, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Great.
Is everybody good moving on? Oh, Greg, you had a question?
Well, I just wanted to say I don't want to toss out Steve's thoughts yet, and so I just said I'd love to see the costs, as people are asking for costs of just the other alternatives that have been abandoned. Have one question, I guess, it may be in here and I missed it, would be, have we actually talked to CDOT about trying to use a section along Shale Bluffs in there with a shed, or could it be scaling of Shale Bluffs, which they do every now and then. Shale Bluffs is making itself wider all the time because it's collapsing as we go. So it needs sheds, but I don't think that's such a bad thing to ask about with CDOT. The other thing is, just want to remind everybody that years ago, some enterprising guerrilla bike trail builders made a trail, or were working on a trail from the ABC to the Brush Creek Park and Ride, I understand, and they were forced to reclaim it and pay a fine and all that. So there may be an actual single track option available to some commuters and some recreators that could get people from the Park and Ride to the ABC without all of the criteria that we've established here, which is the 10-foot plus wide, ADA compliant grade profile, hard packed surface. All these criteria we've added have caused us to go to these beautiful solutions, which are very expensive. I'm just wondering if there's a way to get a bike trail from the ABC to the Brush Creek and Park and Ride in any way without having to go to that expense and with the bridges.
That's
And
a
I'd love to see when they come back to us that be part of the discussion when it's a public process.
That's
Thanks.
a good
And-
point,
and
Greg.
Greg,
But wait, I think there's a
I
thing.
just wanted to,
Yeah, go ahead, Gary.
we looked at that alignment and that, that was not a good trail by any means, way or form. That was trying to use a shale bluff area that you see it erodes all the time. So it's not feasible unless you create structure. And once you create structure, the cost goes up. And then, you have to get into the environmental piece. So we're gonna bring people down into that river valley with a bike trail. And so we, at the time, when we did the Rio Grande Trail Management Plan, the Roaring Fork Gorge, we decided to say no. And we wanted to keep everyone up high. So those two pieces are the reason why we're not looking at that other option, because environmentally and feasibility, it was just not an option that we wanted to consider.
Okay, thanks, Gary. And I think there's an issue called the American Disabilities Act that it many times just requires you to have to make things available to disabled persons. So that's another thing. So let's move into the east alignment.
Great. Thanks, Patty. So hopefully I'll answer some more of your guys' questions kind of as we run through this option in a little bit more detail. So again, option 2, we're calling the State Highway 82 East Alignment. This pink segment here, as you can see, generally just follows adjacent to Highway 82. And I think, as probably it sounds like a lot of the people in this room are currently thinking, we initially also all thought that this alignment was going to be preferred. It's a no-brainer. There's an established corridor through this section. And all of us on the project team actually did a site visit earlier this past fall, walked around out here, and as you try to walk down there, you try to say, okay, how could we get across here? You really do start to see some of those challenges. Obviously CDOT, 82 through this corridor, there are substantial amounts of bridges, substantial walls, substantial drainage areas that go through this corridor that we're going to have to cross as well. And we have reached out to CDOT and we have discussed with them various options, and kind of what we came to was that this was going to need to be a completely separate structure from the highway. If the highway, the highway bridges, meet or exceed their lifespan, they're going to need to be rebuilt. And our trail, is potentially, we can't just tack on from a structural standpoint, tack on a trail to the existing structure. And so there are a lot of challenges that come with constructing this from CDOT's point of view. We would need to be using, their traffic lanes to build this alignment, and there'd just be significant impacts during construction and things like that. So we'll go into a little bit more detail about some of those things in a few minutes here. But so this trail alignment, we're looking at about 2.3 miles of new trail construction and an estimated time of about 11 minutes to ride your bike along this trail. So we're working with a narrow platform here, significant amount of structure needed to bridge those areas I previously discussed, and just a lot of difficulties that Mark's going to go into a little bit more depth in. So musical chairs again. Here you go, Mark.
Thank you. Thanks, you guys, for being here. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks again, Ashley. So I guess before I dig in, maybe one other thing I want to touch on with Steve and Greg's comments. The west side of State, at Shell Bluffs, the west side of State Highway 82, there's like a little clear zone in there that is basically dedicated rockfall space by CDOT. So, they have retention structures there, but they do leave some clear distance to allow that debris to come down. So in talking to CDOT, that was certainly a non-starter to occupy that space. So with that said, that's kind of how we ended up on the east side of State Highway 82. And, you know, this alignment is, again, as we've all been saying, it seemed like the way to go, and then we all kind of got out and walked around there, and it certainly, there were a lot of challenges. So I'm hoping I can kind of relay some of those, and I think probably the best way to do it is to just kind of take a look at some renderings and take a look at some photos kind of that alignment. So the renderings you see on this page are renderings that the DHM put together for us that show what that crossing might look like through Shale Bluffs. So, you know, one of the big things we tried to do is sort of like match the pier locations to reduce the visual impacts of the pedestrian trail. But what this kind of shows is, you know, in this location and in a bunch of other locations, we're going to need a ton of structure to actually maintain ADA grades through. So when we went through and actually developed a profile that would meet ADA requirements, we ended up coming up with 2,400 linear feet of bridge or elevated structure. So if you remember back to the option one, we have, you know, these two really big 600-foot long bridges, but in total it's only 1,200 versus this alignment that has 2,400 feet of bridge, and that doesn't include all the other retaining walls and structures that you'd need to actually hold up the trail platform. So, and then I think the other piece of this that's worth considering is just, I think we've talked about the Shale Bluffs area in quite a bit of detail, and just the rockfall hazard and the instability and just, you know, it's an incredibly difficult place to build a construction access road and a foundation. But beyond that, you pass over a handful of, you know, historic landslide paths and drainages, and really just to maintain an ADA grade through there is incredibly challenging. So, so if we look at the slide here, this just kind of shows some photos of a couple areas along the alignment. So the photo on the left and then the photo on the top right are both of the Shale Bluffs area. So that photo on the left is basically the southwest corner of the Brush Creek Park and Ride, kind of looking up valley. And then the one on the upper right is an aerial view. So, you know, you can see there it's 45-degree slopes. You know, you can see there's no vegetation, like nothing holding it together. So if you can imagine trying to build a structure through there, it's going to be quite challenging. The photo on the bottom right is the Owl Creek culvert, another feature that would need to be bridged over. And then the photo in the middle it's not really any specific area other than to say it's you know, this is what a lot of this alignment looks like. You know, you have these steep vegetated slopes that, you know, if you can imagine trying to push a 10-foot wide trail through there, you're going to need retaining walls to kind of hold up that bench and actually pass a trail through there. So what I'd hope to leave you with is that, you know, this option has some incredible challenges. You know, CDOT obviously built a highway through there, but as you all know, it wasn't easy. You know, a lot of earth was moved, and you know, just a lot of challenges, and certainly trying to do the same thing with a trail through here would be incredibly challenging. So so now that I've kind of talked about the structures on alignment option 2, I'm going to turn it over to Mary Jean, who will tell us what we've all been waiting to hear, which is kind of a breakdown of sort of all the different structures along the alignment, as well as kind of the costs of those structures and the total project cost. So thank you.
Okay, so I just want to make sure we're clear. We are not making a decision on which option today, but we're getting a very in-depth. So just to know, we're still going to have a lot of discussion. So we're getting a lot of in-depth information on the options, which we're not deciding today.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they can inform comments back about what we really want to study and understand in the back end.
All right. Yeah, so
Yeah, okay.
the moment everyone's been waiting for that you guys already know, or most of you know. So I just want, since there's already kind of been questions, you know, just walk through of how we got to the cost that, you know, we arrived at. So
the plan view on the left is a breakdown of the two alignments that Ashley previously went over, but split up by trail difficulty or difficulty to construct, with a more difficult to construct segment of trail being more expensive. So we kind of split this up by, how you'd see ski runs at the resort. So the green segments are the least difficult, so that would just be like a trail on grade. So your cost would be, some grading of the flat bench, and then a rock base course, and then the 10-foot wide asphalt trail. And then the blue segments would have a retaining wall on one or both sides of the trail, and then the black segments represent a bridge structure with a concrete surfacing. So we've formulated the cost by coming up with a square foot cost for the green trail segments and the black bridge costs, and then for the blue segments, a square foot of wall, and then in addition would also have the same trail surfacing as the green segments. So this bar chart at the top just gives a side-by-side comparison of what was shown in the previous tables of the segments, difficulty segments for each trail option. So option 1 is shown on the top, and then option 2 directly below that. So, as kind of already, I think, hammered in there, is that option 2 requires more of each type of trail difficulty, with significantly more of the black or most difficult trail, which has the higher cost per linear foot. And then for option 1 on the top, that gray segment on the right represents the existing Rio Grande Trail, so the existing infrastructure. So, while that trail connection is slightly longer, the new segment to construct is significantly less. And then just in the bottom view, I don't know if it's a little bit hard for people in the room to see, but that's just an overlay of the alignments in a Google Maps aerial view. It's just to kind of give a better perspective of how it fits into the topography. So option 1 on the left here's the Brush Creek Bridge, and then the AABC Bridge, and then option 2 on the right shows the 82 alignment. And one thing just to point out from this, this view, that, the segment, the connection is a little bit shorter, but, we're still not a straight shot because it is falling along the curves of Highway 82. All right.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yeah.
When you're moving along, could you just let us know the ownership of the properties on either side of the bridge spans? Because it says Aspen Consolidated Sand. Do we have approval to cross their property, or the intercept lot, or the park and ride, excuse me? I know that's very complex on who ownership of that, and is it CDOT or whoever to cross that, just so we know if there might be some issues with utilization of properties that aren't under our control?
Yes, so
that'd be great.
Well, I was just going to just weigh in here briefly about the Aspen Consolidated piece, and we have spoken with them, and they are willing to work with us on options there.
Okay, and then through the intercept lot or the park and ride, and we're okay with cutting a trail through there?
I don't know if those conversations have taken place. Dave, do you know any insight there?
We have discussed it with them. I don't foresee any issues. I think a trail is perfectly
Just those
in
would be
line
things
with.
that we'd have to be thinking about too. I just want to make sure we're clear, because there could be some unanticipated costs through that, yes.
Yeah, just to follow up as well, because we're talking about, new trail versus pre-existing. In the bridge option, if we wanted a future where there were, separate recreational and transit trails, because there's that existing kind of summer one, there's no area where later on we'd need to build an additional recreational trail that we're not counting as part of this, if that question makes sense.
Not entirely, sorry.
If you wanted to
that's
separate
fair.
commuter use and recreational use, because
Yeah.
you got the guys flying and the guys
Right.
social.
So as I understand, the whole area of Rio Grande that we would use for this new transit,
Yep.
e-transit, there's already a recreational trail. So there is not a hidden cost of an additional recreational trail that we would need to build in.
That's correct.
Okay.
I got what you were saying.
Thank you. Someone needs to make sense of what I say. Not gonna be me.
Wavelength. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so now to the project cost. So if it sounds like some of you have already looked at the report. So this is in section 5 of the report, and then we also have more detailed backup information in Appendix C if you want to get more into the nitty-gritty. And so we've broken these up by the level of difficulty, the green, blue, black. So I think there was a previous question on what are the costs of the bridges. So if you look in the option 1 column under most difficult, we're at 16 million, and so that's for 2 bridges. They're about the same length, so they're plus or minus $8 million for the arch bridges that we've included in the presentation. So we formulate our costs based off of current construction cost data, and then, as was previously discussed, we've adjusted as best we could, guessing for inflation. Who knows what it'll be, but to get to an estimated 2025 year of construction, and then including a 30% contingency, because this is a preliminary study, is pretty standard. And so that gets us to that 4th line of the total construction cost. And then in addition to that, there's design and construction engineering, which should be accounted for the total project cost. So that would be between 15 to 25% of the construction cost. So for kind of the bottom line number for option 1, that gets to between 20 and 22 million, and then option 2 is between 26.4 and 28.7 million dollars.
So can I ask who's paying for it?
That's not part of the study.
That's the big question. Are we splitting it 3 ways, or
I'll put the credit card in, and then you draw one at the end.
Yeah, just a thought.
No.
All right, and
Our limit got lowered to
one last
0.
swap back to Ashley for the evaluation of the 2 alignments.
Thank you very much.
I thought she was going to say Vail was going to.
I know, I was waiting to hear that,
That's a
actually.
very sensible solution. We'll write them a memo.
I was actually hoping she'd say Garfield County, but.
Yeah, right. Hey, we gotta build Southbridge still. Let's calm down.
Rachel wasn't.
They're not watching.
They are now.
Oh, there's the press. I always forget about them. Okay, sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
Whoops.
I think I'd be used to it by now.
Yes.
Updated yet. That's just slow.
That's awesome.
Oh.
Going back and forward again.
Okay.
Or stop sharing, start sharing.
It's making me dizzy
Is
now.
everyone, you're seeing
Looks
it
like
right?
it's changing.
No, I'm seeing the other slide.
Okay. Just stop and start again.
Yeah, let's try that.
Okay. Sorry guys, we're getting so close, I swear. Good. Okay, awesome. Yeah, so obviously we've talked a lot about these 2 trail options and, kind of the process we've gone through to get to this end point, and what we've called our options evaluation matrix. So this really synopsizes everything that we've put forward to you today, everything that's in our report, and just kind of summarizes everything. Again, this table can be found in our report in greater detail in section 5. So really what we've kept in mind throughout this whole process is kind of 5 parameters, which are cost, maintenance, user experience, constructability, and any environmental impacts. So we've looked at all of those things, and we've given them a rating. So green best meets that objective, while red is more of a negative attribute or feature to that alignment, and whereas yellow is more of a neutral or a negligible kind of feature of each alignment. So our preferred alternative obviously should have the lowest project cost, be the least amount of maintenance, create the best user experience, be the least challenging to construct, and have the least amount of environmental impacts. So again, green best meets this criteria, yellow negligible or neutral, and red does not meet this criteria. So as you can see just from the visual here, option 1, again, as we've hammered pretty hard here, best meets the criteria we feel of these objectives that were put forward in our feasibility study. So,
Can I ask a question on that?
Mhm.
Do you mind going back?
Yep.
All these made sense to me,
Mhm.
but I was curious if you could further explain option 2 gets a red score in safety.
Yep.
And then roadway impacts, because it seems like it's off the roadway. So can you explain those reds?
Yeah, so for safety, we didn't touch on it. If I go, I'm just gonna go back really quick, sorry, just so you can see. So option 2 here, you can see kind of in these renderings, we have this fence built up on the 82 side here. And the reason for that fence is that in the winter months and even during the summer months, we're worried about any snow throw from the highway or any debris that could, be launched or, come from 82 onto the trail. So we're kind of including that fence along that side to kind of mitigate that, potential safety hazard from the highway. So that's kind of where we come up with that kind of safety hazard or that red score.
But I guess the question is like, do we say it's red because even with that we still think it's dangerous? Because that's how I hear red.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's no safety concerns.
Yeah, I think that,
except we
the
have
point there
safety
is that
concerns.
they are comparative where. Yeah. Sorry. So yeah, I think the point there is that those kind of are sort of defining how well it meets the criteria, and I mean, if you're asking, do I think option 2 is dangerous? No, I mean, I don't, compared to a Shero or biking next to parking on the side. No, I don't think it's dangerous, but certainly compared to option 1 where that is a full dedicated bike corridor, whereas this is you're gonna have vehicles at 60 miles an hour 10 feet away from you. Like it's definitely a different from a safety perspective. I think option 1 is certainly better. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think one other thing that I probably should have touched on before that I didn't is kind of within that category we have like user experience, and it's worth considering with that option 2, like what it's like biking next to traffic on a state highway, and how does that sound, how does that feel, how does that it's 80 degrees in the summertime, but if you're biking next to a highway it's 105. Whereas option 1 is going to be just kind of this nice dedicated corridor over the river. And so I think just kind of really from just user experience across the board, aesthetics, all that stuff, like I think definitely option 1 is the preferred on that criteria.
Got it.
So
Thank you.
Yeah.
And
Thank
then you asked about the red on the roadway impacts as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so kind of going back to, CDOT and actually being able to construct option 2, that's kind of where the roadway impacts come in, because there would need to be cranes and a bunch of equipment and different things to be able to actually build the bridge or the structures in the trail adjacent to 82. And then we kind of gave just a neutral rating to option 1 there, because there are obviously still going to be some roadway impacts on getting up onto the Rio Grande and through there and accessing, the roads in that location.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good.
Thank you. Any more questions from the, are you guys wrapped?
I
can
gotta.
bring-
I was just gonna synopsize, and then we're
I
good.
love that word. That's
One last question for me. Greg?
yeah.
Will metabolize.
Oh, one last question for me. This is the tough question that I hate
One
to
last
ask, but I
question,
have-
Greg. I've written that down.
Yeah, it won't be my last. I'm sorry. I just lied to you. Okay, what are the obligations? What are the legal requirements of ADA compliance? And I know how important ADA compliance is, but we have a lot of trails in this community. I'm guessing the Rio Grande Trail isn't ADA compliant. Certainly, our bike trails and ski trails aren't. So why are we only looking at ADA compliance on this? Is it an actual legal requirement, or is this just an aspirational goal? It's important to know that.
If you're, oh, go ahead, Gary.
Gary, go ahead.
Oh, I mean, the reality is we've made the Rio Grande Trail ADA compliant. I mean, that's one of the bigger things we worked on over the last, 10 years, is to make the Rio Grande Trail ADA compliant.
Including the dirt surface?
What?
Including the dirt?
Just the hard surface.
Just
No,
the pavement?
the unpaved part of the Rio Grande is ADA compliant too.
It is, okay, thank you.
Yes.
I'm
And so-
still correct.
Yeah, no, and so the Rio is, and the goal for us is always the law makes it state that, yeah, if we just create this as a mountain bike trail, yeah, we don't have to meet ADA. But if we're gonna make this a connection to a park and ride, the law is not gonna, I mean, unless somebody truly sues. I mean, the legal piece of it is difficult, but our goal is always, if we're gonna create this type of connection, to make it ADA compatible, because if you want people to be able to connect to a park and ride that has accessible and ADA spots, we want to be able to connect that all the way through.
Another
Okay,
thing.
thanks.
Yeah. Another
And
thing.
then just a question, I don't see a way to do this. I don't think not being ADA compliant is gonna make it any easier. I just wanted to, not to belabor the point, but it'd be great to know what the additional cost is to create a trail that's ADA compliant, because it does seem to be wider, bigger, harder, and a more difficult engineering challenge when it's ADA compliant. It'd be nice to know what the cost differences are, but I don't want to push that too far. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
That
another
makes sense.
point to make as well is that, obviously everyone knows this is a really big price tag, and if you're looking for funding opportunities and you're looking to CDOT or, federal funding or state funding, generally, or I don't want to say 100% of the time, but I think almost 100% of the time, you need to be ADA compliant to be eligible for any sort of funding from a government entity.
I just want to make a
Thank you.
reminder to this board, we have a hard stop at 7 o'clock. And we have like 10 minutes to 6, so I just want to remind everybody.
Hard stop at 7.
Yeah. I've already reprimanded Dave about that. What's this 7 o'clock stuff? Yeah, because I know we've all had a very long day, so please, so not to cut you off, but please do
Oh,
your.
no worries. I'm going to be
what was it
super
called?
quick now because I feel like we've got it all covered. Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of synopsize. Obviously, we've talked a lot about option 1 and 2, but just to synopsize again, here's an aerial image of option 1. The red components are the 2 bridges that would go over the Roaring Fork River, with the existing Rio Grande Trail in gray, and then the proposed new trail in green. So this option really most effectively meets our project criteria. It's much more technically feasible in terms of constructability and issues in that regard. We feel it creates a better user experience. It's obviously less cost, less environmental impact as well. So, and then again, to synopsize option 2, running alongside Highway 82 here, it's just much more technically challenging than option 1. We do have some of those user safety concerns and, interfacing or being really close to that traffic on the highway there. more construction risks with, utilizing the 82 platform, as well as trying to get down into that Shale Bluffs corridor and, construct the actual structures through that area. And it's just a overall higher maintenance cost and construction cost, so.
And Tori did just post, note to me that the agenda does say 6:30, so I lied about the 7 o'clock. So let's see where that goes. Thank you. I think that, for me, the greatest concern is if we do go out to a public process, we need to present this with a very unbiased nature, not to say we think option 2 is the way to go, because the public will take that as an offense if we say, they'll be really offended if we say, we want your public input, but this is the preferred. So we just need to be really careful when we present this information to the general public, if we choose to go there.
Yeah, just comments on that too. I would be concerned if what the scope of going out to the public was A or B, because you're forcing people into an affirmative answer when this is a really big, expensive project, right? Like what I'm really be more interested in, and this comes from, I am a recreational user of these trails, but in my mind, we don't need to do this for recreational users. There's already a trail for recreational users. So if we're gonna go spend $20–30 million, it's really intended as an EoTC transit project to get people off the road. So it is that kind of e-highway that I think we're targeting. And so, the question I would have for people is, do you currently transit in and out of Aspen? Have you ever used your bike as true transit or for recreation? And then once you're in those buckets, why or why not? And it's the why not that's really interesting, right? And so indirectly, you're getting answers that will help inform A or B, but I think that's much more powerful. So if someone says, I don't do it because time, okay, well then the shorter route might be better. If I don't do it because of, convenience or, environmental impact, well then B might be better. And I also hope we get some answers that might yield a result of, we can actually have this impact to some degree without one of these projects, right? If it's just like, I have nowhere to put or park my bike, well, there might be a solution there that doesn't require bridges and new paths. If it's, I don't know what to do with my kids, maybe there's an opportunity for a shared, attachment for your bike, whatever. But I really want to understand what's driving people's behavior to change first. And then at the end, show them the projects. But I think if we put that up front, we're committing ourselves to a yes that may not yield the result we want.
Okay, so Steve had his hand up, and then I'm just going to see where the members of the board stand so we can move forward on this.
Okay, so these are comments. I think I have 3 points. First point is the BoCC looked at what I call the high bridge that the Open Space and Trails brought to us as basically one of these bridges over the Roaring Fork Gorge, maybe about, 8 years ago or something. Rachel and I were the 2 elected officials who were on the BoCC at that time that turned that down. I think because of the aesthetics mostly, not so much the cost at that time, but just when we saw the pictures of the high bridge going over the Roaring Fork Gorge, it seemed like that was something that we didn't want to go there because of just the visual impact of it. Second point, there is the possibility of not doing a full trail from the airport to the Brush Creek Park and Ride. The easy parts of it could be done with a bike trail separated from the highway that would separate the bicyclers from the highway, and then you'd have to have a way to feed them onto the highway for just the Shale Bluffs section to get from there to Brush Creek, where they would actually be on the wide shoulder. And you see bicycles riding through there, highway bikers do ride their bicycles through there now. It would shorten the distance greatly that a bicycler would have to be on the highway, but that would be an option we could consider. It wouldn't be a full separated bike trail, but a lot of it would be separated. And I think that should be considered. It would be way, way less expensive if we did that. And then the third option, which I actually am probably more in favor of, would be, and this involves, in my mind, a raft of, it might be a train on rubber kind of concept. It might be a train on rail kind of concept, going from the Brush Creek Park and Ride into town, high-speed transit kind of a thing, where if bicycles could wheel their bicycles onto this, people bringing luggage on at the airport could wheel their luggage on to a platform, just a straight in subway kind of a door into a new kind of it wouldn't be the current rafta-buses, but I see we would have a different kind of rafta-bus that would be conducive to carrying people, wheeling their bicycles in and holding them. They could get off at the airport. It'd be just a short distance. That would be their way they could get there that distance without building anything. It's just changing our system of buses.
Okay, Steve, I think we've got background noise coming. You must be in your kitchen because it's making it difficult to hear you. So, because you've got some background noise, I think, is that where our only, yeah, but just so you know, I'm going to bring it back to the board because we have other people here who need to make comments specific to where we need to go today, which is to determine whether or not we're going to bring this to a public process. But Steve, this is going to come back to us for a lot more conversation. I have a feeling. So, please, sir.
A couple questions. First off, I think if we're looking at this as a true commuter option, I think we should have a third option, is that just utilizing the Rio Grande and not having another bridge bringing people back to the ABC, because the Rio Grande is a fine commuting option into town. I'm just not convinced that we're going to need that other bridge to get people to the ABC. It would be nice. I mean, I think ideally, when this concept first came up, we thought, the straight shot along Highway 82 is the way to go. But hearing the engineers, I think it doesn't really make sense. So if we're looking at that, getting people into town on bikes, I think the single bridge might be a good option, or maybe another option we should propose to the public. The second question I have for Gary is, I thought that in the Sky Mountain master plan that there was a soft surface trail that would connect people from the ABC to the intercept lot kind of along the Shale Bluffs. Is that not in the plan?
No, that was not in the plan. It was proposed, but first of all, as you saw with the engineering, getting across that Shale Bluff area with any type of trail, even a 2-foot, 3-foot, 4-foot wide trail, requires major structure. And, and then dropping it down towards the river, the environmental piece of that was, kind of a no-go. And at the time when we originally did the Sky Mountain Park Management Plan, the public and Board of County Commissioners and the Open Space Board did not want to go there. So it was not connected between the two. What you do now is you take the Aspen Mass Trail down to Jaffe Park and back up into Aspen or to the ABC through the existing routes.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, do I have any other members who want to make comments? Bob, are you reaching for your hand? Yeah, go ahead, please.
Sorry, Patty, I had on mute. Thank you. $20+ million is a lot of money. And I feel that until we get an idea, or let me put it another way, $20 million is a lot of cars to get off the road to make this thing cost effective. And I really believe that we need to know that information. How many cars can we take off the road before we do much else? Now, unless the only way to know that is to go to the public. I heard previously that there hasn't been any work done yet from the consultants on how many cars are coming, would be coming off the road. So I don't know which comes first in that regard. But I guess I'd like an answer to that. Maybe David, you could provide some thoughts on that, please.
Thanks, Bob.
Yeah, I would say that, we recognize that that is still something that we need to address. That this isn't intended to be a fully baked package coming out to you. This is more of an iterative check-in. Should we keep going with this at this point? So we recognize that we do still need to get that information. And whether that comes before the public process or after or during, that's still something that we need to figure out, but we recognize that it needs to be determined.
Thank you.
A follow-up question on that?
Yeah, go ahead, Skip.
So, I mean, Bob more concisely articulated kind of the scope of the questioning that I was hoping to get. But to cut to the chase, do you think that going out to the public is what is necessary to determine, how many cars we can get off the road, or is there a more administrative or historical study type of approach that could get as reliable of an answer?
I don't know that I've got a solid answer to that off the cuff. I would say that we probably need a hybrid of talking to the public to see, like you said before, what are the issues? Why aren't they currently biking, say from Brush Creek Park and Ride or from another location, so that we can better understand that perspective, and then feeding that into other larger national averages to try to come up with some sort of estimate.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think there probably are projects that we can look to see, in this community, they were able to pull X% of cars off the road or something like that. But I also feel like with our unique valley community, that it would probably require some of that public outreach piece as well.
Cool.
Thank you. And again, let's not forget, it's not too far up the road with Buttermilk parking lot, where people can get out of their cars and ride their bikes in. So, and they're not bringing them into town and not crossing either the Castle or Maroon Creek bridges. Tori, please.
So the suggestion by the mayor was about one bridge instead of two. And so are options like that going to be vettable through the survey? I guess what I'm asking you is, you're hearing a lot of different perspectives on this. The scope of what was presented in the memo is a pretty narrow scope of what the survey or public input was going to get to and look like, but we're hearing a lot of different ideas and a lot of, is that part of this, can that be integrated? Skippy himself is asking for a lot of different kind of transit-oriented questionings and input. So that's question number one for you. The second thing that I will say is that for $20+ million, we could probably build a reversible third lane bridge over the Castle Creek where the current bridge is, if you really want to do something good for transit. I want to move this forward. So for this cost, and because my open space and trails is coming to me with this, I can support this. But what I'm putting back at you is that I think what you've heard tonight is the desire for more information around this. And if that can be included, that's great.
And I was just going to add, Tori, that this idea of a one bridge potential option is what Gary was referring to earlier as possibly phasing this project. And I think we could get to some of that data through the public outreach as to whether or not your final destination being in Aspen or points west of that. So there's probably a question set that we can put together to answer some of those
questions. That's a
questions.
good point, because you have a different bike riding sector. Those who want to go into town on the Rio Grande straight through, those who want to go to the ABC and maybe go up Maroon Creek, Castle Creek, Highlands, or to the ABC to work. So, and they don't really have, the option would be difficult, especially in the winter, for them to come back up the hill to the ABC. So,
yeah,
but yeah, and I don't know if this is possible if we decide to move this forward, if we could have a look at what is going to be presented to the public and add some more of our questions to make sure that the issues we've brought up here today are part of bringing it forward for public comment. So, I mean, I don't know if we're in a hurry, to get this done, but I myself would like to see more, because you said there's very brief in our packet. I'd like to see more of what would be fleshed out with the public. So, Are there any other specific comments as to questions to move this forward or not for a public process? I think we have a commitment of 25,000 from the 3 jurisdictions, so it's a matter of whether we or not we want to move it forward to gather more information, or do we not? Gary, please.
Well, to your point, we could bring back to you guys a, kind of the synopsis of this. And, if you do want to move it forward, we can bring it back to you guys on what we would ask the public and bring you kind of a public process, timeline, outline, and also kind of answering some of your questions of, it's the chicken or egg. Do we do some consulting or something that? And so we could flush that out more as a team and bring it back to you before just going straight to a public process.
Okay. I would appreciate that.
Patty, I would, if we need a motion to move that forward, I would make a motion that we do it as described by Gary.
Okay.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and I have a second.
Just a comment.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think, at some point going out to the public is right, whether it's now or later. I guess I'll just speak for myself. I don't need a huge in-depth with the timeline of what questions we're asking when, but I do want to understand, what do we not know now that we will know at the end? And if that's just reflective listening for 5 minutes now, it could get me there, but we've thrown a lot at you, so it would make sense to take some time, put that down in writing. But I really want to know, what will we know at the end?
What do we hope to know at the end?
What do we hope to know at the end?
All right, so
Secret to the
do I have
universe.
any more discussion? I do have a motion and I do have a second.
Just procedurally, on Gary's, the idea to bring essentially a scope back to you. Time-wise, I'm not sure that we'd be able to bring it back in a full EoTC meeting, so if you're okay, we can bring it back to you in individual meetings to get that feedback.
Whatever works.
Okay.
You never know, we have another meeting, we have a bunch, I looked at my schedule and it seems EoTC's popping up all over the
Is
place.
this one of the things that, I'm not asking to rush it
So-
for any reason, but is this one of the things
you.
that we can check in via email as groups too, so we don't have to wait months for questions that'll be put together in weeks?
If you have any thoughts or ideas, you can forward it individually to Dave, and, if you think of things after the fact, but we'll come up with a way to bring this back to each
Okay.
individual jurisdiction.
Okay.
And before I call the motion, we do have a public hearing. So I need to open it for a public comment. Any members of the public wishing to comment on this item, I am giving you 3 minutes. I'm cutting you off. So if anybody is here or online that wishes to comment, Tony, please come up. We need a mic there, so thank you.
I haven't sat in a chair for a long time. Thank you so much, Austin.
All right, got you on the clock.
Okay, for the record, my name is Tony Kronberg, and believe it or not, this has been a project dear to my heart since when the Highway 82 was expanded through Shale Bluffs. And I worked with CDOT at the time about trying to get a cycling path through there, and they did widen it. But one of the disadvantages of option 2 is the fact that snow projectiles come across. I live at mile marker 28 in Snowmass Canyon. The snowplows took out a fence, have hit cars. The option 2 is really not a smart option for that reason, and it's dangerous. And the second thing is that if you build option 2, there's no connection to Rio Grande Trail. And that is one of the biggest commuter aisles that we have, whether people are commuting to work, going to the Woody Creek Tavern, and that I, as a member of the public, you'll hear my comments right now, is that I support option 1. I think it's a great idea to have 2 bridges. You've got 1,000 new people coming in at the lumberyard between the fire station and whatnot. There's no really easy, convenient way for people to get across to the Rio Grande Trail. I challenge everyone in this room to start at the the Aspen Sanitation, walk down that hill, walk back up again, and tell me if you can do it twice a day. And you've got your kids with you, you've got your grandmom, you've got your dogs. Same thing with coming out of Brush Creek. I've ridden horses for about 40 years, exercised them all up and down the valley. One of the beauties about this is it would connect the equestrian ridership at Cozy Point over to the Rio Grande Trail. Now, equestrian riders, they cross through Smith Hill Road, which is so dangerous because that little bitty trail that comes off of Brush Creek, you go down and it's like straight down. And I don't even like walking a horse down that, much less being on top of one to go down. So this was a great presentation, really good questions, really good information. As a member of the public, option 1, 2 bridges connected to Rio Grande Trail and take away that dangerous alongside of shale bluffs, because all it takes is one rock to come across or an accident. Where I live, Snowmass Canyon, 2 weeks ago, car flying down, hit a piece of ice, went up over the guardrail, and landed right down almost next to the river.
I went over the Jersey barrier. I was there when they were pulling them out.
Oh, were you there? So
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you so much. This is really
Tony.
exciting.
Yeah.
Option 1,
So
here we go.
it'll be interesting to see what the public has to say about using this as a commuter trail. So, anybody else from the public before I close the public hearing? Is there anybody else in the room or online who wishes to comment? I have a phone number of 7232 ending in. If you wish to comment, please raise your hand by *9. Or if you're waiting for the next item, we're going to have a presentation of that shortly. We will have public comment on that item also. All right, I'm going to bring it back, close the public hearing on this, bring it back to each individual board. Would you like to call a roll call from your jurisdiction, please, Bill Madsen?
Surely. Tom Good?
I'm sorry, yes. The answer is yes, thank you.
Tom Fritzstein?
Yes.
Bob Circus?
Yeah, this is on the motion to bring back more information.
And to do, look at the public process.
Right, on the scope before we go to the public process.
Right.
Yes.
Melissa Shank?
Yes.
And Bill Madsen, yes.
Okay, so that's 5 of you? Could we have a 5-0 vote from Snowmass? Tori, please.
City of Aspen, Skippy Mesereau. This is on the motion and the second that was on the floor.
Yep.
John Doyle?
Yes.
Tori? Yes.
Okay, so we have a 3-0 vote for the City of Aspen. Pitkin County, Steve Child.
Yes.
Okay, Greg Poshman.
Yes.
And Patty Clapper, yes. So we have a motion that has passed, and we'll be moving this forward. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move, unless anybody wants to take a 5-minute break, because we've been sitting here since 4 o'clock. Are we good?
Time
Or-
to get through.
You good? You good? You good?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, we're going to move forward. The next item,
Before we go into the next item, Bob and I just need to make.
I know, but we have to announce the item first.
Okay, but I'm
I
just telling
I got you covered.
Okay, thank you.
Next item on our agenda is a public hearing review requested access through Brush Creek Park and Ride. This is for a development of the Aspen Jewish congregation, and I believe we have a possible reason to recuse here. So please.
Well, Bob and I talked about it with, our town staff, and we are members of the Aspen Jewish congregation, but our participation doesn't go beyond that. We have no monetary interest in this matter, and we do not feel that our judgment is negatively impacted. But if anyone else feels we need to recuse ourselves, we can.
Yeah, well, I spoke with the Pitkin County attorney today, and upon advice, it was a question of whether or not it would be in the best interest of all parties involved if the two of you did recuse, just to keep the process clean. But it's really your decision, unless anybody has comments as to this.
Patty, I spoke with John, this is Bob. I spoke with John Dresser today, who felt that this issue of the approval for use of the Brush Creek Park and Ride, and the issue before us in the EoTC today, which was basically to give staff a direction, was not an issue that he felt was necessary to recuse, and that we at any later date could determine that the issue might require recusal, and we could recuse at a later date. So I am not in favor of recusing at this moment.
Okay, fine. I will go with whatever you guys have decided. I have reason to be a little concerned, but if you guys are comfortable, I'm fine. The next process in this will come to the Pitkin County Board of Commissioners. So today we are not talking about any land use application. We're simply talking about the opportunity for access to the Brush Creek Park and Ride. Yes, sir.
I wasn't gonna say anything because I didn't even think about it. I'm not a member, but I am a member of the tribe, and I have been to several events hosted by. But I also don't feel conflicted in any way, just in case anyone wanted to say that I was.
I
It's
think
like
we're gonna
Egypt all over again.
I think we're gonna go. So let's focus just on the access issue before us. So please, Dave, and then hopefully we can move along.
All right, thank you, Chair. I'm going to try to move through this quickly because we are running out of time here. This is a request for access through the Brush Creek Park and Ride for a private adjacent development. The developer in this case is the Aspen Jewish Congregation, or AJC. It's important to note as we discuss this that the developer is currently in their due diligence phase. So what they're looking for is reasonable assurance that they would be able to obtain access through the Park and Ride to access Highway 82 directly. The proposed development, from what we understand through the developer provided traffic study, is that it would consist of an approximately 5,000 square foot worship lobby, kitchen, and restroom space, a 3,000 square foot Hebrew school and restroom space, 27,000 square feet of parking, which is about 75 parking spaces, and a potential daycare facility. The procedure that we're looking at, I think it's important to point out a few different items here. First is that the City of Aspen, Town of Snowmass Village, Picken County, and RAFTA are all signatories to a 2005 Management, Maintenance, and Use Plan IGA for the Brush Creek Park and Ride. And so what this means is that all three entities plus RAFTA are required to approve of any change of use through the Park and Ride. And it's staff's opinion that using the facility as a through street for an adjacent development is a change of use in this case. Secondly, is that the City of Aspen and RAFTA are also surface leaseholders on the property, whereas CDOT is the property owner. And the developer, finally, will need to go through a CDOT access permit to access Highway 82 directly. Procedurally, the EoTC does need to make a determination as a part of the CDOT access permit review. So the City of Aspen and RAFTA, as signatories to the 2005 IGA, would provide the EoTC and RAFTA approved direction of approval or denial as a part of a referral comment back to CDOT through that access permit approval process. In addition, the EoTC does need to review and make a determination on access through the Park and Ride before the developer is able to submit a land use application to Picken County Community Development. And this is both procedurally on the developers and because they need some sort of assurance before they move forward into full design. But secondly, and possibly more importantly for you, is that the Board of County Commissioners sits both on the EoTC and is the final approval entity. So because of that, the EoTC isn't able to review this application once it's formally submitted to Picken County Community Development because it then enters a quasi-judicial process. What you see on the right here, that's my attempt to simplify this process in terms of where we are. So at the top here, the developer or applicant in this case has requested review from the EoTC and has also simultaneously submitted a traffic study to CDOT to start the review process on the access permit. The CDOT will request referral comments from the City of Aspen and RAFTA as leaseholders. And through the spirit of the 2005 IGA, those comments should be consistent with the EoTC decision, and assuming RAFTA signs on to that as well. But before the applicant is able to submit, they do need to get a go-ahead from the EoTC, and then through the process, they will need to obtain a formal access permit onto Highway 82.
So Dave,
through
can I
CDOT.
just ask real quick?
Yeah.
Has there been any conversation as to bringing in the Brush Creek Homeowners Association, Brush Creek Metro District, or now the Brush Creek Caucus? They have very specific requirements. Many people are not aware of that. Over any use in their view shed from Brush Creek as specific to the Park and Ride. So, and the use of the Park and Ride. So that's just something I just want to make mention of. Picken County has always honored and acknowledged that agreement, and it came out of a lawsuit some years ago. So I just want to make sure everybody knows that I think Brush Creek HOA, or whatever they're going to be called at the end of the day, should be consulted. Thank you.
So we have not reached out to them directly because we're not looking for a formal approval or denial at this point.
Okay.
And I'll talk about that here in a minute.
Okay, thank you.
Graphically, and I believe that the applicant's engineer is here this afternoon and will do a presentation, but real quickly, in terms of the concept that we have before you, is the subject parcel is outlined in red here. This is the adjacent Sanditon property. It is currently developed with a single-family dwelling unit. It does currently have an access on Highway 82, approximately where those arrows are. It's a little bit farther up valley, I believe. Maybe it's at that location, but it's roughly in that area. The proposal so far is to access the development through the intersection at Brush Creek Road and Highway 82, traversing through the park and ride and entering the backside of the parcel, while also maintaining a right-in, right-out, roughly where the current single-family dwelling unit access is. At this point, there is limited information available on this development, and it's staff's opinion that we do not have enough information to provide design-specific recommendations to you. Similarly, we don't believe that the EoTC as a body has enough information to formally approve or deny the access at this time. As a result, the developer will need to come back at a later time once we receive more information. And at this point, what we're looking for from the committee is administrative direction to utilize a number of standards to review this request as we receive more information. And I'll go over those on the next slide real quick, but I do want to note that with these standards, they are not developer specific. So what we did is we sat back and said, okay, if anybody wanted access through this park and ride, what are the things that we're concerned about? What do we need to know in order to make a recommendation? And so that's how we came to this list. And we're looking to use this list as a lens, more or less, to formulate that staff recommendation once we have more information. As an overview of the standards themselves, there's 9 of them. These aren't listed in any particular order. This is in the same order as they appear in your staff report, but the numbering isn't intended to signify any kind of order of importance. The first one is a demonstration of significant public benefit. This is looking at, say, if we're going to be offering up public space for a public or for a private benefit, that there should be notable compensation back to the public. The second one is that all alternatives are explored. We just want to know that this is the best alternative, and any other alternatives that could potentially serve the development have been identified and explored as well. Thirdly here is that traffic operations at the Highway 82 and Brush Creek Road intersection shall not be impaired. I think this is a pretty important one, particularly when we see in developments where they may incrementally increase traffic at that intersection, but aren't necessarily required to do improvements at that time. Because if we do want to improve or expand the park and ride at a later date, that may bump us over that threshold, and then those improvements and that cost is then being borne by the taxpayer. So this is something that we are looking at very closely for that reason. And secondly, and I'd say equally as important, is that we've spent a lot of money, time, and energy over the years promoting this facility as a commuter and transit facility. And as traffic continues to back up at that intersection, we continue to devalue the overall use of that facility and that public investment. So we need to make sure that that is preserved in the long term. And then 4 is that any traffic increases through the park and ride shall be demonstrated to not degrade transit service and access, bicycle and pedestrian access and pathways, carpool, kiosk access, and internal traffic queuing or delay. This is trying to look at it from the customer perspective. So if they're going in and using it, making sure that their level of service is at least on par with where it is now. And we're continually trying to improve that, but we certainly don't want an access point to degrade it further. Number 5 is that the developer shall pay its own way. I think this is pretty self-explanatory, that if we do need any improvements to the parking lot and the park and ride facility itself, that the developer should pay that cost. And then 6 is similar to number 5 in just looking at it from a ongoing maintenance and operational cost perspective, is that if this is an ongoing use, making sure that that is either that cost is not being borne by the taxpayer or that it's otherwise being offset. Number 7 is more of a legal one in that there's no conflict with the existing City of Aspen lease, RAFTA lease, or the Brush Creek Park and Ride Management Maintenance and Use Plan intergovernmental agreement. Number 8 is that the development access shall not hinder the use for special events. So as you all know, this is an important facility for events that happen in both Snowmass and in Aspen on a regular basis. And we need to make sure that any access points through there are not hindering that use of the facility that is important to both of those communities. And then number 9 is that any development shall comply with the parameters and requirements of any existing or new CDOT access permits. I think this is pretty self-explanatory. If CDOT is requiring any improvements on the highway, that those need to be completed before access is permitted through the park and ride itself. And then at this point, we are looking for administrative direction to utilize those 9 standards when reviewing this and potentially any other future requests for access through the park and ride at this time.
Okay. So is there any are there any comments or questions to Dave? Not public comment yet. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the list of 9 is great. Other things that I would want to know, one you kind of touched on, but highly likely we're going to expand parking there over time, and we're doing this sort of farm stand food truck pop-up, but I would hope that that also expands. So I specifically want to know that this would not inhibit those future enhancements or expansions. And then just the second is I want to know of all the other adjacent or bordering properties, if any of those are developable and the same was allowed for them, what would that impact look like in setting that precedent? I'd want those added to the list.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? I am going to open the public. Oh, Steve, sorry. Thank you. Steve, please.
Thank you, Patty. I was envisioning an event at the Aspen Jewish Center where 75 cars might all be leaving at the same time, trying to go in the direction of Aspen. It could create a traffic jam just in the, trying to get through the traffic light, and that could impede the commuter flow and the bus flow going through that intersection. That is covered by one of these proposed standards. So I agree with these standards. One other thing I would like to find out is there any possibility that the 75 car parking at the Aspen Jewish Center could potentially be used for public parking for, overflow parking from our Brush Creek Park and Ride, or could it be used for special events parking on certain days anyhow, when it doesn't conflict with the Aspen Jewish Center use of the parking lot? And that would be something to ask the developer on that. Thank you.
I think that might have been addressed in the packet information, but thank you, Steve. Any other comments and hands? I'm sorry, Steve, I didn't see your hand was up. Thank you for pointing that out. So I'm going to open the public hearing on this. This is for a public to comment on specifically on this item about the requested access. I do have a clarification though. This is if EoTC decides that this is okay to allow this access, is this the final time? Because we don't know what the development's going to be. No. Exactly. It's just a guidance to allow the process to move forward. Is that correct?
So you're talking about the standards that we're looking at here today?
No, I'm talking about if we were to say,
vote.
Yeah.
Our vote today is just to
Right.
allow David to continue to go through this with the filter of this criteria and some amendments or some additional.
When we get more information
questions.
as to the development.
Then we will.
Okay, just want to make sure that everybody's clear on that. So I saw Chris Benden had, Chris, why don't you come up and please, and I'm going to limit people to, you're going to tag team here or are you going to each do comment?
Yeah, we're with the Aspen Jewish congregation.
Okay.
And we'd like to, we were hoping we
You
could
get
make a
3 minutes, so.
presentation. Okay. I'll make it brief.
Thank you.
Chris Benden with Benden Adams here on behalf of the Aspen Jewish congregation. I wanted to provide a little bit of background as to why we're here. As Dave said, we are in a sort of a period of due diligence, wanting to see if this is a property that could be workable for a new synagogue. One of the big kind of fundamentals is getting in and out of the property safely. And so we've identified the Brush Creek Park and Ride as an ideal kind of access point. Certainly in a position, and we've had this conversation with Dave, and it feels like every other transportation person in the Western Slope, that we are amenable to working with the transportation group in a mutually beneficial way. We understand that there's special event needs, overflow parking needs, maybe during certain special events, ability to drive through the property, to exit out onto 82, other things that may be mutually beneficial. Obviously, in pursuing a synagogue, we're looking for a place of refuge, for the congregation, so it wouldn't be an everyday kind of thing. But wanted to provide that. Most important in your discussion, if you feel that this is a horrible idea, don't keep it in the back of your head, right? Because we are in a period of due diligence. We are willing to go forward into a design process, but only if we feel that this is going to be eventually a workable scenario. Jason Sneisel is here from the Jewish congregation, and would like to make some comments about kind of the purpose and of why they're looking at this property.
Sure. Go ahead, Jason, please.
Thank you,
for
Chris,
coming.
and I want to thank Dave and the staff at EoTC for the time and thoughtfulness that they've put into their approach to this project. It certainly is reasonable and understandable. To share a little bit about who we are as an organization, we are the Reformed Jewish community in town. So we are a progressive community. Among our priorities include social justice work. Our efforts in recent years include support of the homeless encampment that was at the Intercept lot for some time, annual food drives for Lift Up. We were founding members of Mountain Voices Project. We try and root ourselves within the entire Roaring Fork Valley community to be an entity and a force for good. With continued pressure on our current facility and a bit of an unknown of where we may be in the coming months and years, this potential project is of great importance to our community and our congregation. But as Chris explained, before we really can get our membership, our donor base excited about it, we want to know whether it is indeed a viable project. As we continue to look to be a force for good within the community, we see our facility being able to serve not only special event parking needs, but any community and civic related needs that may arise and may be demanded as our valley continues to grow over the years. With our potential preschool facility on the table, we'd be looking at 4 to 6 classrooms and of course being open to the public, and just want to be a good community player regardless of how we are able to help as this may come to fruition.
Thank you. Chris, back to you.
I think those are our comments. We'd be happy to hear your comments, or if you have questions for us, we'd
Is
happy
there
to
any
address
other members
those.
of the public wishing to speak? No? Okay, thank you. Do we have any, I think 7232 is just listening in. I just got a text. We have Haley Zander. Is she? Okay. So I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for questions, comments, thoughts. Tori, please.
Currently, there is access to the property.
There is. It's very much just a right in, right out, like a driveway, not anywhere near the capacity you would expect for this kind of facility.
Are you saying that you
It's directly from 82.
Directly from 82,
Right.
it's basically just a driveway that comes right out onto 82.
Okay, so as this comes back to us, I'd be interested to see what that looks like if you were to utilize that access. What does that look like? What is your potential there? And then you referenced that there's the potential for child care of some sort here. When will that go from possible to either gonna happen or not gonna happen?
As we enter the design phase.
So just seeing how it plays into the overall footprint on the parcel.
Precisely, and what the scope of expense would be associated with
The
it.
funding.
That's all for me. Thank you.
Thanks. I think I had Steve Child next and then Tom. Steve?
I had the same question that Tori was asking about the existing driveway, if that could be used as the access. I presume that that would be, they'd have to do a CDOT access permit there also, and there probably would have to be improvements in terms of turning and acceleration lanes and whatnot from there. So I think they have to go through the access permit process in either location. So I'm curious, the same question that Tori asked.
Okay, thank you. Tom Friedstein?
Yeah, I just want to point out, I think there's a great positive here. This is really, transit-oriented development. I could see that if this development is right here adjacent to the Brush Creek Park and Ride, could potentially take a lot of cars off the road because it'd be so convenient for people to take, bus transit right to the facility. I just want to point that out.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Tom. Anyone else like to comment or questions? Skippy?
The existing driveway, is it only to get onto the highway going down Valley, or does it have a cross? It does.
There is actually a cross.
There is a crossing.
Yeah.
Okay. My reaction, just so you guys, yes, for clarity, I'm happy to look at this. You have a long list of criteria here.
Yeah.
Going to be hard to meet. You guys kind of know the brain damage in that. My first response is why? It's a big parcel. You already have the cross there. A cooling lane coming in and the existing intersection out just seems like way less brain damage for you guys, but I'm happy to look at it.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Yeah, this is another one of those issues before us tonight where it's move it forward. It doesn't mean we can tell you exactly where it's going to go, but we'll give you the opportunity to move it forward. So, and I think that's what you're asking of us.
Yep.
And I wish we could guarantee you what the outcome would be, so your due diligence was, more clear for you. But I don't think we can at this point because we don't know the exact, and technically you guys don't know the exact because you're still looking at the parcel. I just also, we need to also keep in mind that we have a great deal of open space there. We wanted an urban growth boundary. So this is interesting. It is, I think the criteria that Dave has outlined is very pertinent and very applicable. And I agree that it's going to be looked at carefully, and I appreciate that. So I'm going to bring it back to see how members of the EoTC feel about supporting this to move to the next step. And if we have a motion.
I'll do our jurisdiction if you'd like.
Well, you need a motion first.
By jurisdiction, maybe?
No, we.
Okay. I'll make a motion to give administrative direction to review access requests utilizing staff recommended standards as well as other items that were brought up in discussion.
I will second that motion.
And I think Greg had a hand up. Greg, did you want to make more comments, or we just?
I just wanted to, I was hoping I could get a look at we've got the proposed standards up again. Okay, I'm good. Thank you. That's what I was looking for.
Great.
Nope.
Okay, does the board have any other questions or comments? Because we do have a motion and a second on the table. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for being here and being patient with us. I appreciate it. So I'm going to call by jurisdiction. I'll start with Tori this time.
Skippy Mesereau.
Yes.
John Doyle.
Yes.
Tori says yes.
Okay. Mr. Madsen, Mayor Madsen.
Snowmass Village, Tom Fritzstein,
Yes.
Tom Good,
Yes.
Bob Circus,
Yes.
Alyssa Schenk,
Yes.
and Bill Madsen, yes.
Okay. Board of County Commissioners, Steve Child,
Yes.
Greg Postman.
Yes.
And I'm saying yes, but I just, again, want to make it clear that this is first step. So, so the motion passes, and thank you very much. And I have a
thank
feeling
you.
we'll be seeing you again.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, guys.
All of you.
All right,
And
thank
hopefully
you.
next time, we
Leave
can
that.
get one earlier in the agenda than at the very last. So thank you, guys. We appreciate it. It's nice to have you here in person. All right, bringing it back to Dave. So Dave, you were right, 7 o'clock. I was sure we're gonna get done.
Yeah, you said
I will go
I've
through
been here
this extra
since
fast. You
10
heard all
o'clock
of
this
this at
morning.
your prep meetings. So this is an update on the EoTC retreat. The retreat is scheduled to happen next month, April 28th. Sorry. One item I do want to give feedback on is we are looking at changing the time. So in the And the approval for the 2022 work plan says 2 to 6. We're looking at bumping it to 12:15 to 5. So, and I'll take I guess a roster of that here at the end. But we are looking at an optional lunch from 12:15 to 1, and then retreat sessions from 1 to 5. Again, this is looking to be a hybrid meeting, but I'm highly encouraging everybody who's willing and able to attend in person to do so.
It's City Hall, correct?
Yes.
If-
Electric pass.
I would say that if we have no takers for the hybrid, then we can get rid of it. And I would say
just feel like it's so challenging.
it's very.
I mean, it's one thing with to me, but when you're talking about like visioning and can you not hear me?
I totally
don't know.
agree.
I just feel like
In person.
I think we should go for in-person.
Yeah.
And besides that, it's time.
Yeah.
And we do have much better conversations, and retreats are for conversations.
Yes.
I will say this, I always prefer in person, but I know I have the first family reunion in a decade that time, so I will not be able to be in person. I'd like to attend hybrid. If that's not possible, then I'm happy to, submit my thoughts ahead of time in written form to the rest of the board or to my fellow council members, and my family would probably be happy about that, but I'd like to be there.
I
Just-
feel like that's.
We can have you hybrid, we're just gonna keep you on mute.
That's probably what you should do in person too.
So, is that okay if we have somebody who's definitely gonna be out of town?
Yeah.
If you're in town, no excuses. If you're in town, you're here.
Okay,
Hybrid option, yes. Yes to the hybrid option.
Hybrid option is only if you're out of town, and I don't mean in Snowmass Village or in Brush Creek. Okay.
I agree.
I'll vote no on that.
We're not taking a vote. All right, Dave, next.
Patty, comment
Yes.
on this issue.
Yes.
The pandemic is not over. The declaration of a public emergency is over currently, but I think keeping the hybrid option as an option going into the foreseeable future, we are going to have to do that because, we could have another spike in the epidemic, in the pandemic,
Well,
right at the time of this meeting. So do have the option for hybrid just for those who can't be there.
I'm not going to disagree with you, but I'm going to be the power of positive thinking. We're not going to see a spike in COVID, and we're going to all be able to join each other and carry through it. If anybody wants to wear a mask and we're in a big space, then it's fine. We don't have any problem with that. So we'll play it by ear. Doing it virtually is always something we can do at the last minute if need be.
Just setting up the hybrid version does require a lot of staff time up front to make sure everything is set up and working
I'm
properly.
looking at Andrew, and but that means a couple of days. It doesn't, we'll be able to call it one way or the other by then. We can see
Well,
what
we
the
know
trend
that
is going.
Skippy's going to be out of town.
We know Skippy's going to be out of town, so we need to do it anyway. But it's
But I
only,
did give that alternative,
Well,
yeah.
it's not a need. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not a need. He's accommodating.
Yep.
I think what's important here is that we just recognize that communication is better done in person. This is a retreat.
Agreed.
This is not just a meeting, so it'll be just more easily facilitated if we are in person. Obviously, I say we, but I'll respect anybody who has concerns, obviously. But if we could be back in person, that would be helpful to the process, I think.
And I am amenable to submitting my thoughts in another way, because I am totally in the camp of in-person's
and
better.
we're going to go that way, but we will make a final decision looking at where COVID goes a couple days before the event, and we can always work with Andrew.
So at this point, well, it will
I will
be
help
held.
facilitate that.
It will be held at the new city of Aspen City Hall. So
The new
I'll be-
City of Aspen.
New City of
Sorry.
Aspen.
Old City Hall, new city. We're doing a whole new thing, guys.
You were
Been
doing
talking a lot
good job.
tonight.
New Jack City.
So I'll be working with their IT staff to get that set up.
Well, we
But something I am looking at, looking to get here tonight is just a roster of, if you are planning on attending in person and, or virtually.
Bill, you planning on
or
attending in person?
At all?
Yes.
All
Okay.
right.
So everyone here is in person.
How did my hand
Or no,
get
you're
raised?
I'm not,
virtual.
yeah.
Okay.
Virtual
hand
if it's
automatically
available
raised
or
when I
not
raise
if
my
we choose
hand.
not.
How
But I'll
did that
submit thoughts to
happen?
everyone either way,
Okay.
because I got
That-
too many.
My computer is like freaking me out. It's like stalking me.
And then for the
Comes to
people
read.
online,
minutes.
what are we looking at in terms of attendance, expected attendance at the retreat?
I'm expecting all 5 of the Board of County Commissioners to be in attendance.
Get it, Patty.
There you go.
Patty,
Yes.
I have on my calendar a tentative trip out of the country, so I may not be here then.
Okay?
Okay.
So much for that wish on my part. But we'll do the best to have a full council as best we can. I cannot control what decisions people and where they might be.
Okay.
And family reunions are important, and trips are important.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll do our best.
I will,
We can work on that, Dave.
yeah. I will send out an email to everybody if you'd like to respond to that, maybe a couple weeks in advance, to get a final attendance. I do need attendance on lunches at least beforehand, just to know how many to order. Because of the pandemic, they all do have to be pre-packaged. We can't do the big spreads like we've done in the past.
No need to send mine.
Well, and if you don't respond to lunch, you don't get it, right? All right,
triangle.
Dave, what else do we have here?
Just one more thing. You will be getting a pre-retreat packet in advance of the retreat. I'm hoping to get that out by mid-April. That will be, I think, a fairly substantive packet, and it will have a number of attachments. So really just trying to get you all up to speed in terms of what we'll be discussing at the retreat itself. So keep an eye out for that as well.
Great.
Okay, before we close, does anybody have any questions or thoughts about the informationally updates section that was in our packet? Yes, Tori.
Thank you very much. I have a message here from Rachel, who could not join us tonight, and I need to read this to everybody. It has to do with item number 1 in our informationals. Thanks to all EoTC members in attendance today. I'm sorry I can't be with you. I'm attending an important Watersheds and Forest Health Conference in Grand Junction with Club 20. I want to go on the record for supporting the Buttermilk Underpass from the primary perspective of public safety. This area is a heavily used pedestrian crossing zone morning and night, and I believe it's important to address. The benefits to transit system I see as secondary, and from my point of view, they are far less meaningful to our Valley Mass Transit system than it would be to reintroduce and refocus this group's effort on the unfinished elements of the entrance to Aspen record of decision and pursue efforts to complete that work. I'd briefly point out that without the ETA ROD, we would not have been able to build the bus lanes, we would not have the New Maroon Creek Bridge, the commuter parking at Buttermilk, or the roundabout, and our congestion traffic problems would be far worse today than what we experience. It is my belief that continuing to ignore the entrance issue while the federal government is deploying the new, very large and transit-focused infrastructure bill monies would be a generational mistake. It is very likely that couched as the completion of or major component of a bus rapid transit system, the ETA would be eligible for significant federal funding. While the E.O.T.C. mini retreat set for April does not have the ETA on the agenda per se, I do not wish to minimize the importance of that gathering and its agenda. I would request that this group consider a follow-up meeting to the EoTC later this year to focus on directly the entrance to Aspen to fully understand the opportunities it holds for the overall traffic management, public safety concerns, improved commuter experience, and replacement of a bridge that has around 20 to 25 years of useful life left. Thanks for your consideration. I realize this is a big topic and a big ask of all of your time. I simply don't believe it is in the best interest of any of our communities to continue to kick this can down the road. So from that, there's a couple statements in there, but there is an ask that says that we can reconvene or put it on an agenda on a future EoTC meeting for this group to discuss the entrance to Aspen. The city of Aspen is currently doing some updating of educational information so that we are all on the same page when it comes to the entrance to Aspen, and then we want to engage the community as we seek for that conversation to continue on. Thank you.
Thank you for doing that, and you did it so well and so quickly. And we thank Rachel for taking the time to submit those comments for Tori to read.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments from the EoTC members or staff? All right, I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
I have a motion and I have a second. Bill Madsen, would you please call?
Alyssa Shank?
Yes.
Tom Good?
Maybe I'll. Oh, there he is.
Okay, we got you.
Steen?
Yes.
Bob? Bill, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
City of Aspen, Skippy Mesero.
Indubitably.
John Doyle.
Yes.
Tori's a yes.
Board of County Commissioners, Greg Postman,
Yes.
Steve Child,
Yes.
You know, I don't know. We've had so much fun here.
Do it.
Okay, yes, we are adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, GrassRoots. Thank you.
Thank
staff.
you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, guys.
Everybody.
Good to see you guys.
Thanks for being with us,
Thank
Trish.
you. Thank you guys for being here. Okay, I have 10 minutes. I got 10 minutes to go.